Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on this episode of Tech Thursdays. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 155. This is going to be the Linux adventure. I have switched over to Linux now this is day number... What day is it, actually? I completely forgot. I lost track of time. It's like I'm living in the metaverse. This is day number 3 or 4? 1, 2, 3. This is day 4. Yeah, this is day number 4. We've switched to Linux. I have been using 2 different distros. We'll talk about them. We're actually going to go over what I call the 4 pillars, or the 4 primary root distributions. Well, I shouldn't say root, because that has a lot of different meanings. The 4 core distributions that all the other variants of Linux are based off of. And Linux itself is a kernel. It's not actually an operating system. We're going to get into that on this episode of Tech Thursday. So if you're a Linux fan, if you've been on Linux for a very long time, or if you're thinking of taking the plunge into the Linux world and what it's all about, this is probably going to be one of the most important episodes of Tech Thursdays that you tune into. It's going to be all about Linux focus. We will talk about some hardware toward the end of the stream, because I know a lot of people tune into the show for computer hardware discussions. And if you have a tech-related question and you want to make sure that I answer it, do get your super chat in. It does support me, and I will respond to the super chat questions. So if there's a tech-related question, like if you're tired of me talking about Linux and you want me to talk about something else or go off on a tangent, feel free to ask away. But I am going to try to stay focused on the main topic of discussion this week, which is going to be Linux. So they've been saying since the beginning of 2025, and here we are in 2026, they've been saying that it is the year of the Linux desktop. Now, Steam has the controller. So a few years back, Steam released the Steam Deck, and now there's the Steam machine. They actually made it so that you could build your own Steam machine. This has been a thing for at least a decade now, but most people didn't really catch on, for whatever reason. But now Valve is making a really big push. The kind of push that Valve is making right now, with all the hype around their game console and how it's Linux based, is really shaking up the industry. If you guys paid attention to the gaming news earlier this week, there was an article about the PlayStation 5 running Linux. Someone figured out how to boot up Linux on a PlayStation 5. I think it was Ubuntu on a PS5 using an older firmware on the PS5. And it's pretty crazy. So, I've been saying for years that Sony's best strategy, long-term strategy, at staying relevant would be to make a PlayStation console that is essentially a Linux PC. Now, I've said this. There are times where I've said this live on multiple episodes of Tech Thursdays throughout the years. So this is not the first time I've said this. But here we are. Obviously Valve is pushing Linux really hardcore. They're trying to really push Linux, because if they can get enough people. If Valve can get enough momentum to get gamers to adopt a Linux-based platform for gaming, and if they can make it multi-purpose, kind of like what you do on a PC, then that can really get the ball moving. And then I think if Sony's also doing their own thing, if they're making a Linux-based system. Now, obviously, the PS5 running Linux is a one-off. That's not Sony. That's someone else doing that. But I've been saying for years, Sony's best bet at staying relevant long-term in the gaming world, in the entertainment world, is to basically make a Linux-based gaming console / PC. And it's crazy because I've been saying that Sony should do that, And instead of Sony, Valve is the one that is actually doing what I have said that Sony needs to do. So it's kind of crazy how things are really like changing. So it's like you kind of also need, the way I look at it is I've also realized that I need to learn Linux so that I can stay ahead of the technology curve, so to speak, because with all this stuff with AI is really going to take over. It has the chance to disruptively change the gaming landscape forever, similar to what not live streaming on demand like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, all these guys have really changed up how people consume media. It used to be cable TV, it used to be pay-per-view, it used to be physical DVDs and Blu-rays, and before that VHS and Betamax. So all of that has changed. Now it's all stream, subscriptions. And there is a high degree of risk where the gaming industry is the next in line to basically become just like what happened with TV and movies. So to stay ahead of that, I'm going Linux. At least I need to be well informed and up to date on how to use Linux. Because if Valve's going to go that way, if Sony's going to go that way, then I need to be on that side as well. It's kind of like in the movie Titanic. You know, if you've ever saw the movie Titanic, I think of the part where Jack and Rose, the ship is going down, and Jack recognizes that they need to climb over the back of the ship so that when the ship starts going straight down, they're like riding it down on the side where it's easy to stay on top of the ship instead of like hanging from the bar where gravity's like pulling them down. So it's like I'm making that transition where I'm climbing over that wall to be on the other side. So that's kind of the way I look at it. So I'd highly recommend that if you're a gamer, you should at least play around with Linux, at least educate yourself on some of those things, how it works, how it's different from Windows. I'm not saying Windows is bad. Microsoft is very good at what they do. The Windows operating system is very easy to use. In fact, it's so easy to use that I feel like it's almost a handicap. It makes people expect too many things. I'm not saying that it should be hard. I expect Linux to be just as easy, but there is a difference, and there's some pros and cons. And in the beginning, when I was using Linux, I was kind of like, why do we have to do all this? Like, why is it like this? But the more I use it, the more I realize, okay, this is actually pretty intuitive in certain ways, and I can kind of see the approach, why they did it like this, and it's starting to make more sense. I'm actually starting to like Linux more and more the more I use it. Now, I have been using 2 different distros because I'm trying to become proficient in 2 of the largest, most widely deployed distros or versions of the Linux operating system, and one of them I installed on this thing. If you watched my channel video from earlier this week, we did a video on the Framework desktop. So this is the Framework desktop. This is based off of the Ryzen AI Max, up to 128 gigs of LPDDR5X, running at 8,000 megatransfers. Very fast, very good for local AI. And that's another thing too, AI. AI right now is trying to gather all the people to pay for subscription-based AI cloud services. And it's all token-based. So token-based are like ISP data caps. They're trying to impose those type of limits. But if you're doing local AI on something like a Framework desktop, for example, now there is no charge for tokens because you're literally running it on your own hardware. So there's a big difference there. Now, what are the pros and cons of paying for a cloud-based AI service? Well, it's super easy. It's much cheaper up front versus having to buy or build a custom PC for AI, for making like a local AI server. So you can host this on a home network, and now you basically have your own chat GPT in your house, and you don't need to pay for a cloud-based AI service. So that's another really interesting thing about AI, because there's a lot of quality of life things that AI can provide, like summarizing all kinds of meeting notes, reminders, basically organizing stuff. We're not talking about OpenClaw. OpenClaw is probably going to be on another stream. But suffice it to say, I feel like the average tech enthusiast should at least be some level of proficient in Linux, as well as understanding AI, how it works, the different use cases, and the pros and cons of it. Because it's not going away. Even if the bubble pops, it's not going away. So that leads me to the other thing. So this framework desktop right now is running Ubuntu LTS 2604. Ubuntu 2604 is running a very updated kernel. The kernel that comes in this version of Ubuntu is like 7.0 or 7.1. It's much, much newer than whatever was in 24.04, which was the previous LTS. So I've been testing out Ubuntu on the framework desktop, and it is actually very good. We have only ran into one problem, which I was able to somehow solve by reinstalling the deb file for Steam multiple times, and eventually it somehow got patched. It's like it was not work. It was like it had a graphical bug where I couldn't click on the menu buttons at the top of the Steam window, but then the next day it was somehow fixed. There was some update, reboot the computer, and then all of a sudden everything works. So that's like the one problem I ran into on Ubuntu. The other distro, if you guys were watching the live stream the other day, and the latest video on the channel features the Framework Laptop 16. So this is probably one of the nicest, best laptops I have ever used. And this is a fully modular, fully upgradable, build-it-your-own laptop featuring things like dual 40 gigabit USB 4/Thunderbolt 4. It has upgradable expansion bay based discrete graphics up to an RTX 5070 12 gigabyte. And you can spec this thing out up to 96 gigabytes of SODIMM DDR5 5600, which is what I'm currently running in here right now. Dual SSDs, but you can add 2 more SSDs via the expansion bay in the back for a total of 4 M.2 drives in a laptop that has very powerful integrated graphics. We're talking Radeon 890M, probably the best integrated graphics chip for Linux desktop users right now. So really, really impressed with this laptop. It is surprisingly quiet. The idle power and the battery life on a big 16-inch like this with discrete graphics is insane. Framework has tuned this BIOS to support Linux out of the door. So I literally, when I'm on battery, I check the system monitor, not system monitor, the mission control that I installed on here. Mission control tells me when I'm on battery, the discrete graphics card, the Radeon 7700S, is pulling 1 watt. It's idling at 1 watt. Insane. I'm getting over 8 hours of daily use battery. I can go basically almost all day, pretty much almost an all-day workday experience on battery with the Framework Laptop 16. So very, very impressive for a Linux laptop running Fedora 44. And it has mostly been a trouble-free experience. I had 1 or 2 problems with Steam in particular on the Fedora 44. It would not launch using the icon or using the app store. I had to use the command line to launch it, the terminal. And then after that, I had to go in and disable some kind of hardware acceleration for the web page views. And then after that, it can run without the terminal. So a little bit strange. It seems to be a bug with the latest version of Fedora. But other than that, it's been problem-free. Like, everything is working. I can stream on it. We did a live stream on it the other day. I had a Thunderbolt 5 docking station connected to it. The fingerprint reader literally works out of the box with Fedora 44, 43, or Ubuntu 2504 or 25.10, I believe. So, of all things, guys, a fingerprint reader and Wi-Fi 7, MediaTek Wi-Fi 7, and a fingerprint reader work out of the box on Linux. Like, that is like the first class experience for a Linux user on a laptop with insane idle power, insane battery life. So that is crazy good. Framework has really impressed me with their support for the Linux platform, because most other vendors you go and install, like you take some random laptop and you install Linux on it, it's like, okay, yeah, it'll run Linux, but the Wi-Fi 7 drivers aren't working. You gotta go hunt those down and spend an hour doing that. And the fingerprint reader doesn't work, and you can't find the drivers for it because the vendor doesn't care. So it's like there's all kinds of compromise. Typically, if you install Linux on a laptop, and if you actually want every single feature on that laptop to work perfectly, well, I can tell you, the Framework laptop, everything works perfectly. So very, very good experience so far. I did break the kernel though, and I had to like re-image the entire laptop like yesterday, because I went to the what do they call it? I forget what they call it, but it's basically Fedora 45 pre-release edition, and it's like a rolling release. And man, it messed up. The kernel got messed up. I messed up the Mesa driver, and I didn't know how to roll it back. And I tried rolling it on the fly, and it messed things up, and it was causing my computer to like hard lock randomly, where I'd have to hold the power button to restart it. So I was like, okay, let's wipe this clean, re-image the whole thing, start over. After doing that, no problems. You're looking at two laptops. You're considering a Framework 16 to dual boot. Oh, it is excellent for dual booting because it can fit two SSDs. But yeah, I think that's a very good idea. I highly recommend the Framework 16 if you're going to be on Linux as your primary. It works really good on Windows too, though. But every laptop can run Windows, so I wouldn't even worry about the Windows part of it. It's really like, do you want all the features to work on Linux? That's always the key question. Need to save a stable snapshot. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. That's the thing I need to figure out how to do. The other thing I need to learn how to do. So I was trying to get Hibernate working. I can't. Hibernate doesn't work on Linux out of the box. Like, you have to do all kinds of weird, like set up a swap file and all this stuff, and calculate your ZRAM plus your physical RAM. And I tried doing that. There was a guide on Framework's community forums. I tried following through that, but it still wasn't working for me. So I don't know. Yeah, but I really would like to get Hibernate to work, because I use Hibernate on all my Windows laptops to maximize battery life when I'm away from the laptop for a long period of time. And that's the one thing. That's literally the one thing that it's missing, is Hibernate ability. Ideally, sleep to Hibernate is like the best feature, because the way I have my Windows laptop will go to sleep after like, I think, 10 minutes of it being inactive, and then it'll go from sleep to Hibernate after, I think I have it set to do it after 60 minutes or 90 minutes. Hold on, I need to turn off one of these other computers over here. Okay. 8 GB VRAM isn't an issue on a good distro running. Yeah, the other thing too is I noticed that the amount of resources that you can get away with running Linux, hardware resources, are way lower. The requirement for a good experience, the bar is much, much lower on Linux than it is on Windows. We saw this when I was live streaming the other day. Normally, when I'm streaming on Windows, my computer is using like 28 gigs of system RAM, almost 32 gigs of system RAM, sometimes 36 gigs of RAM in like extreme cases. That's why I don't believe in 32 gigs of RAM being enough. But on Linux, 32 gigs of RAM is enough, because the worst case that we saw on Linux, I think, was Monster Hunter Wilds, and I think it was using like 20 gigs or like 21 gigs of system RAM at the highest. At the worst case scenario, it was usually around like 16 to 18 gigs of RAM. And I'm a power user, so I got like tons of things running in the background. and Linux was only pulling like 18 gigs of RAM. I'm like, man, someone can get away with 32 gigs on this machine. I'm so conditioned by Microsoft to require to overbuild so much hardware. So it's like for me, minimum spec is like 96 gigs of RAM. Like my laptop, my Framework 16 is running 96 gigs of RAM out the gate because I was so scared that it requires so many resources. But Linux, man, it doesn't actually need that much RAM. I was impressed. Very impressive stuff. All right, let me bring up Paint here. So this is the thing that I learned the other day. So Linux is not an operating system. Linux is a kernel. So Linux is a kernel. And from this kernel, you have the 4 core pillars, or the 4, maybe 5. You guys can help me determine that. But we've got 4 core pillars of the Linux kernel. 4 variants. These are the 4 core distributions, also referred to as distros. You have the original Slackware, which no one probably knows about. Then you have the OG Debian. And then you have Red Hat. I think a lot of people in IT know that name, Red Hat. And then the last one, this is where it gets kind of weird. So there is Arch, which I believe is the 4th one. But there's also this other more obscure one that someone who really knows Linux is going to have to help educate me on this subject. There's one called Gentoo or Gentoo. I say Arch is the 4th. It's the youngest. But there's also this Gentoo that I've been hearing people mention, or Gentoo, which are not the same. Arch and Gentoo are not the same. Maybe Gentoo is the 5th one, but these are the core 4 big ones. Like, basically, you have 4 different core families to choose from. So if you want to get into Linux, you basically need to start with one of these 4. I'm not saying these exact 4, but what I'm saying is you need to choose a version of Linux that is a descendant of one of these 4 core figures. These are like the 4 Dark Masters of Digimon, or they're like the 4 Dark Horsemen of whatever. You know, it's like that kind of thing. They give off that kind of vibe. Or the houses, if it's like some kind of House of Dragons lore, or some Game of Thrones nonsense. It's that kind of thing. You're either of the house of, or it's like the houses of Hogwarts. You know, you got your Slytherins, your Ravenclaws, your Gryffindors, and your Hufflepuffs. It's that kind of thing. So you have to, the step 1, if you're someone who is brand new to Linux, you have to choose one of these 4 to first, like, pick one of them, and you go with one of those, and then if you don't like it, then you can switch to another. The nice thing about Linux operating systems is it is so easy to install a bootable version of any of these on a USB thumb drive. You only need like a 16 gig thumb drive to do this, and then you can literally like test drive the entire operating system off of a USB thumb drive before you even have to commit to installing it. You can't do that with Windows. You can't do that with Mac, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure you can't do it with Mac. If you can't do it with Windows, you probably definitely can't do it with Mac. So, the fact that it lets you test drive, so if you can literally create bootable thumb drives of like all the different distros of Linux, and you can just test them one by one and see, like, you know, test one for like 10 minutes or 5 minutes or what, depending on your OCD, and then figure out like how, you know, like how you like it or whatever. I tested a bunch of distros on the Framework desktop, and a bunch of them, you know, people recommended me. I didn't like a lot of them, but what I've realized is there's 2 that stand out. So let's talk about the big descendant of Slackware. So Slackware's major descendant is called SUSE. SUSE Linux. This is the OG. And then Debian has a whole bunch. Debian has a lot. Like a lot. But the most famous version of Linux that I think pretty much a lot of people who don't even know anything about Linux might recognize the name is called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a descendant of Debian, and it is probably the most famous version of Linux globally in the entire world. There are people that I know, we'll call them like normies, who don't know anything about Linux. I know people who recognize the name Ubuntu and don't even recognize the name Linux. That gives you an idea of how well known Ubuntu is. There are people out there that literally recognize Ubuntu, but they don't recognize Linux. That's like they don't even know what Linux is. But if you mention Ubuntu, they know what Ubuntu is. How crazy is that? That right there proves how popular Ubuntu is, how much brand recognition it has. And it is probably one of the best, if not the best, distro for beginners because it is so approachable for someone who's already used to Windows or Mac. And then we have Red Hat, the houses of the Red Hats. So the Red Hats have the Forerunner, who is up there in the front of the lines, and that is known as Fedora. I think it's lowercase f. I don't know. Fedora with a capital or lowercase? I don't know. Fedora is a very famous version of Linux as well. A lot of Linux enthusiasts will recommend Fedora or some variant of Red Hat or some variant of Fedora. So it's another very popular one. So we'll talk about it more, but it's another one that I probably would recommend. We'll talk about which one I actually recommend personally for beginners. And then Arch. Arch is the one that is just Arch. Arch is just different. Arch is like the what do you call it? It's like the dark horse candidate. It's that weird one that's just kind of there. The fourth member of like the Council of Elites, and it's just kind of like that rogue entity that's just part of the group that doesn't exactly click with everybody in the group. So Arch is that special one. It's kind of like the rebellious one. It has that attitude. It has that weird vibe. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just kind of different. So one of the ones from Arch that I think is very popular recently is called I don't know if it's pronounced Catchy or Cashy. I've heard people say Cashy OS, cache as in like 3D cache, or I've seen people say Catchy, like it's got a catchy name, you know. Like I don't know how to pronounce it because I've heard it pronounced two different ways. But that Cashy or Catchy is like the most popular version of Arch. Everyone says Cashy. Cashy OS? That sounds so... Anyway. Alright, so Cashy OS, this is like the Arch, the most popular, as far as I can tell, as far as I'm aware. Cashy OS is the most popular of the Arch distros. So this is oversimplifying it, but what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to break Linux down to the point where it is very easy to understand and very approachable for people who have never dealt with Linux before, but they're somewhat interested in getting started. So basically what you want to do is you want to do some research on these four. Not these. These are for like the history books. If you want to read up on these and learn like the history of Linux, you can go and read about the four original ones. But the ones that people actually use are probably going to be down here somewhere. And there's lots of other ones. You'll hear people say Pop OS, Kali Linux, Nix, Mint. You know, there's a whole bunch of other ones that I've heard about. But what I can tell you is I tested these three recently. And I decided, this is what I decided. My recommendation for beginners, if you want to just blindly follow GTR, I recommend my first recommendation is Ubuntu. It is so easy, especially the latest version. LTS 2604. Plug and play. Stupid simple. Such an easy setup. It's so much hand holding. If you're someone who's afraid that you don't know what you're doing and you want a lot of guidance, Ubuntu is so easy to use. I totally understand why it's so popular, why it's so widely used, especially in the commercial world. So, like, for example, corporations, like if you go to your employer, if you work for like a company and you tell them you want your work computer to run Linux, they will either tell you to get lost, or they'll tell you okay, but it has to be Ubuntu. They will not let you run some other distro, assuming the computer belongs to the company that you work for. If it's your own computer, then it's like whatever. But then it depends on like their company policy. But if you're given a computer from your employer and you tell them you want to run Linux as the operating system, they may not allow it at all. There's a good chance they won't allow it, first of all. But if they actually entertain the request, they're going to tell you gotta run Ubuntu. That's the one that they'll require you to run. So that's one reason. A lot of like schools, especially schools outside the US, in the EU, I've heard that Ubuntu is the distro that they use in the educational institutions. So, and there's a lot of reasons for this. One, Canonical, regardless of what your opinion of Canonical is, they do a great job of keeping the libraries consistent across LTS versions, across even non-LTS versions. So like basic things that have been around for like 20 years, they're not going to drop support for it. This is one of the challenges or the risks that you take when you want to live on the bleeding edge of technology, especially with Linux, because the kernel sometimes drops support for older technologies and older applications. And Ubuntu has a very good track record of supporting all these older technologies. And in a lot of parts of the world where they don't exactly have the ability to constantly stay up to date, and maybe their computers, maybe their infrastructure is more limited in terms of the scope, in terms of capability, Ubuntu is very good for that reason, because it has a very consistent experience across the various different versions of Ubuntu. So I have tested Ubuntu 2204 or 2202 LTS, very old version of Ubuntu now, on relatively old hardware and relatively new hardware, and it worked. I tested 2404, everything worked perfectly. We did a very good live stream looking at Ubuntu 2404 LTS a few weeks ago on an old computer, and it could run games at 4K amazingly well using Steam Proton and the magic of Proton hotfix for things like Crimson Desert, of all things. So it's like, if you're afraid, if I go to Linux I can't game, that is completely not true. There are some limitations, particularly if you play games that use kernel level anti-cheats or just some kind of anti-cheats. The support there is very hit or miss right now, and I feel like that's the only drawback right now when it comes to gaming on Linux. If you play certain types of games that require things like kernel level anti-cheat. But other than that, though, it is a really good experience. So for that reason, Ubuntu is my number one recommendation. It is so easy. I currently am testing or daily driving Ubuntu LTS 2604 on this framework desktop here. Even though it's got a Arch and a Mint logo on it, it's running Ubuntu because Ubuntu just works and everything works, man. And the performance is amazing. We're going to be testing AI via Ubuntu later on. I might make some videos about that if you're interested. Do get subscribed to the channel so for that future content. But that's my number one recommendation. My number two recommendation, coming in second place, is going to be Fedora. Fedora is actually the distro that I have the most recent experience with, because my Framework Laptop 16, this laptop, which is rapidly becoming my favorite laptop of all time, is running Fedora. And no, I'm not dual booting Windows, and I do not plan on installing Windows on this Framework laptop. I did not get a framework to use Windows. Now, if you want to get one and run Windows, you can totally do that. You can dual boot Windows. It has two M.2 drives. You can install Windows on one M.2 and you can install Linux on the other M.2, and that's totally fine. But that laptop is currently the best laptop for Linux. If you want to use a laptop and feel like you have first class experience, like everything just works. Wi-Fi 7 works perfectly. No random dropping out. You put the laptop to sleep, you wake it up, the Wi-Fi's still working. It's still working at Wi-Fi 7 speeds. I tested it. It gets 6 gigahertz full frequency band, 80 megahertz channels. Really, really good Wi-Fi performance on a Linux distro. On top of that, fingerprint reader. When was the last time you had a fingerprint reader on a laptop actually work consistently with a Linux distro? And you can put the laptop to sleep, you can wake it up multiple sleep cycles. The fingerprint reader works every single time. It never messes up. Rock solid. These are the sort of things that make make you feel like you're not being treated like a second-class citizen by the computer hardware manufacturer just because you decided to use Linux as the operating system. So for that reason alone, I highly, highly recommend Framework if you want to use a laptop with Linux. So they actually go out of their way to fully support certain distros. Ubuntu is one that they fully support out of the box. Everything works. Now, I have not tested Ubuntu on the Framework laptop. I've tested on the desktop, and everything works. But you get, like, I've tested the BIOS updates. So Ubuntu, the firmware app in Ubuntu, you can update the BIOS from within Ubuntu, just like you're doing it on a Lenovo ThinkPad or any other gamer laptop. Fedora, same deal. You can update the BIOS right from Fedora. It'll boot up it'll run the EFI shell script, prime it, run it, restart the computer. You'll see the little Framework logo, loading bar go across, updating the BIOS. So I've already done the BIOS update on the desktop. I've done the BIOS update on the laptop. So one was on Ubuntu, one was on Fedora. Both of them work. Great experience so far. Now, in third place, Cashy OS. This is going to be third place. And there's some caveats. So Cashy OS, I tested it for like 20 minutes on the Framework 16. Things mostly worked. Wi-Fi 7, I tested the sleep cycle a couple times. There were a few times where I think on the third test cycle, I woke up the laptop and the Wi-Fi 7 didn't reconnect. And then I connected and then it asked me for the password again. And then I just kind of like put it in. And then just like disconnected, and then I put it to sleep again. Then I woke it up again, and then it didn't connect. Then I clicked connect, and then it connected. So kind of weird behavior with the Wi-Fi a little bit, but it was working mostly. Like once it's connected, it doesn't disconnect. It's just kind of like I don't know what's going on. Why is it missing the 3-way, 4-way handshake there? But Cashy OS was mostly working, and the fingerprint reader, it doesn't work out of the box. There's like a bunch of things you got to do in the command line to get it to actually manually capture the fingerprint. You got to do, I think, like 5 samples of the fingerprint to write to memory or to cache it or whatever. But it can work. It is possible to get it to work. But I don't recommend Cashy for beginners because though you can get it in a very good working state, and don't get me wrong, if you just want to install Cashy on some random desktop that you put together, I'm sure it'll be totally fine. But keep in mind, what I'm talking about is if you're trying to run it on a laptop and you want everything in that laptop to work with Cashy OS. I'm talking SD card reader, micro SD card reader, USB 4, Thunderbolt 4 docking stations, Wi-Fi 7, full 6 gigahertz channel width, negotiation, fingerprint reader, all those things. Like all the different weird peripherals that laptops come with that desktops don't necessarily have. Like the driver support on Cashy is not as good. It's like one tier down from where it should be compared to Fedora and Ubuntu. And that's because Ubuntu and Fedora, their developers actually framework actually has direct contact with Canonical and the Red Hat or whoever the managing developers are for Fedora, and that's the reason why those two have like a much better experience. So for that reason alone, Cashy's gonna be in third place. But you can tell, like, I guess I haven't tested Suzy, so I can't really. If anyone in the comments, anyone watching this, if you guys have experience with Suzy recently, let us know. What are your thoughts on Suzy Linux? I have not personally tested it yet. Otherwise, I would have tried to compare it with the other three. But I've heard that it used to be very, very good, and recently it's not as popular anymore. I don't really know why. Cashy gets valve updates. So that is one upside. Yeah, if you're gonna use like a custom PC that you built, like a random desktop, yeah, I'm pretty sure CachyOS is fine. He had some Strix laptop. So you're talking about a Ryzen. You're talking about a Ryzen AI 300, right? When you say Strix laptop. When I hear the word Strix laptop, I think Strix Point. Or are you talking about Strix Halo? Maybe it was Strix Halo. I think I know what video you're talking about. Is that the HP? The HP something something with the Strix Halo? Yeah, that $4,000 laptop. I think I know what video you're talking about. Yeah, it depends, but this is what I recommend for beginners. Also, I feel like most people that are coming from Windows and Mac, they may or may not immediately like the minimalist look of Fedora. And as a beginner, like if you're starting out from scratch, like you have zero experience with Linux, I do not recommend things like KDE. Because KDE, though it usually works fine, if you start trying to do things like install video editing software like DaVinci Resolve, I have seen and I have read there are some issues with KDE. There's some kind of problems that can crop up. So I don't recommend beginners go immediately to KDE. I highly recommend GNOME just to start, just like bare bones Fedora or bare bones Ubuntu, to start. Like step one. Zorin OS? Oh no, Zorin. Oh, here we go. Zorin. Yeah, actually, Zorin, that you got a point there. Yeah. Zorin is, yeah. Zorin's got like a skin. Yeah. Zorin's pretty cool, actually. I was reading about Zorin the other day. I almost tried it, but I was like, okay, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, that one does, I would agree. For one that has a more like Windows beginner look, Zorin is actually quite good. I just like that Ubuntu's default libraries are very good. They're very good because they maintain compatibility with so many old things, but they also maintain compatibility with things that Fedora doesn't have, like HEVC, for example. You try to use the store, like it's like, oh, this codec is missing, cannot play this file. The codec is missing. Install. I install it, nothing happens. So it's like it just hangs, doesn't do anything. So you gotta go and like uninstall. Go find the RPM Fusion or the Free World. Do the swap, find the Flatpak for that one. So it's like there's a lot of extra things that you got to do on Fedora to get the same equivalent experience that you start with on Ubuntu. Like if you're someone who likes the start menu from Windows or the dash menu on the desktop all the time like it is on Mac, Ubuntu is definitely going to be more approachable. Now, you can obviously modify these other ones to do that. But it's like, okay, if one distro already has it, and you can skip all those steps to go and find out how to get that working on the other distro, like, like what is the true benefit of the other distro at that point? If you're just constantly modifying Fedora to look like Ubuntu or provide functionality that Ubuntu already has built in, right? Like, I'll give you guys a good example. You know, on the desktop screen, you know how you have your desktop screen? So it's like you have your desktop background. Desktop background is right here. You know this? You know what I'm talking about? In Windows, you know how you can randomly, like, click? On Windows, you can do this thing. You know how you used to do this in school, like in the computer lab? While the teacher's talking, you just sit there and you'd, like, do this on the desktop screen. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that used to do that. But you know how you can do this on Windows? Guess what? In Ubuntu, you can also do this. In Ubuntu. Ubuntu does the same thing. Wow. Who would have thought? But guess what? You go to Fedora, and you go to the desktop, and you start clicking to make the square thing. Oh no, it doesn't do it. There's no square. What? Where's my square? Where's my square? Why? Fedora, why you do this? What? Like, where's my square? See, those are the sort of things, man. So it's like in Windows, I got my square. My little this thing. You know what I'm talking about on the desktop? On your desktop background, you can go and do this. Ubuntu? Oh, look, you can do this too on Ubuntu. Wow. Incredible. Fedora, oh, there's no dragging, no click and dragging. Oh no, there's no desktop icons on Fedora. Fedora doesn't have desktop icons. You can't even add them to the desktop by default. So that's the reason why I highly, highly recommend Ubuntu. Because if you're coming from Mac or Windows, Ubuntu is going to be way more familiar. I'm using Fedora GNOME, default Fedora. I literally install Fedora from Fedora's website, and that's it. No taskbar, no icons. That's it. And that's how I'm using it. That's exactly the same way Linus Torvalds uses it. So, yeah, all these people who recommended Fedora to me, I came so close to re-imaging my laptop to Ubuntu many, many times this week. But I stuck with it. I decided, you know what? Nah, we're going to keep on pushing through with Fedora. I'm going to keep this operating system on the laptop. Force myself to try to figure out why people like this style so much. But I don't know, man. That minimalist approach, I guess it appeals to certain types of individuals. It certainly doesn't appeal to me. If you install the same extensions. I don't even know what the extensions are. But see, that's the problem. That you're literally just validating what I said earlier. That's the problem. You have to do those extra steps. How many people want to do those extra steps versus how many people just want it to behave out of the box a certain way? You know what I'm saying? I want the operating system to have this thing. I want this on the desktop. I want icons on the desktop. Fedora doesn't do either of those things. So, and again, see, this is the reason why Ubuntu is more popular. Because Ubuntu is more, the key word here is utilitarian. Utilitarian in design. Ubuntu's design philosophy is more utilitarian. Therefore, it will naturally appeal to more people right out the gate. And I totally understand why after using Fedora. And that's why it's more widely used. That's why IT companies allow it on their employees' computers. They don't allow Fedora. I mean, if they allow Fedora, it's not going to be Fedora. It's going to be Red Hat. You know what I'm saying? So it's like if you're gonna be doing DNF and RPMs, you're gonna be doing Red Hat. You're not gonna be doing Fedora. I can tell you that. If you're gonna be talking with the IT department, it's either Ubuntu or Red Hat. Straight up Red Hat. But very interesting stuff though. Like that design that Ubuntu uses There's a reason why Mac has it. There's a reason why Windows has it. That's all I'll say. But yeah, if people are just getting started, then this is what I recommend. I don't really know about SUSE. I years ago, people kept telling me I need to learn SUSE Linux to work in like IT. You gotta know SUSE. You gotta know Red Hat. But, you know, I don't know. Does anybody here know about SUSE Linux? Like how good it is or how bad it is? Anyone want to chime in on that? On SUSE? Alright, hold on. I want to do a poll real quick. Which Linux core distro do you currently use? And then the choices are going to be Slackware, Debian, Red Hat, and Arch. Because we're doing it from the core level, or the roots, because there are so many other distros that fall under those four families that we're gonna go all the way to the cores. If I say Ubuntu, that leaves out, you know, all the other Debians. If I say Fedora, that leaves out all the other Red Hats. So we're gonna go core. So basically, if you're running Cashy OS, you're gonna be voting for Arch. If you're running Bazite, you're gonna be voting for Red Hat. If you're running SUSE, you're voting Slackware. If you're running Ubuntu, obviously you're voting Debian. If you're running Zorin, you're voting Debian. So that's how the poll is structured, just for clarification. Brian's the only SUSE user. Because the thing, when I hear SUSE Linux, I immediately think server, you know? Like, I don't think of, like, an actual, like, running it on a laptop or a desktop as, like, a home PC. I'm sure it works. It's just, like, I don't know how, like, this is the thing, guys. Like, the key thing is using it on a laptop or some kind of, like, modular computer that has a lot of different custom peripherals, third-party peripherals. Like, how well does it work with peripherals? SUSE is definitely a server enterprise distro. Does Slackware have a freeware public, like, home user style distro? Because if it does, I don't know what it is. I wish I did. Which one is Kali Linux based off of again? Is that a Red Hat distro or is that Debian? I always forget when it comes to that one. Man, there's a lot of people that voted Arch. Arch has 50% of the votes. Arch seems like it's that rebellious roguelike distro family. You know what I'm saying? Like, I said this the other day. I'll say it again here. I don't know. It might. I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but when I tested Cashy OS, and when I was testing Cashy OS the other day on my Framework Laptop 16, I was like, man, this thing. Oh no, it was on the Framework desktop, not the laptop. It was on the desktop. Because you know why? It was because I was trying to get maximum. I was going for maximum gaming performance on a Strix Halo, and people were like, "Oh, get Cashy OS. Cashy OS has like core parking and stuff like that." So then I'm thinking like, okay, and then I booted up in the test drive mode, the live mode on the USB, and I'm looking around in there and like, okay, this is cool. It's got icons. It's got Windows like UI, but then I was looking at the themes and how the icons looked, like the color scheme. And I'm thinking, man, this looks like some custom firmware PS3 from like 2013. Like this looks so aftermarket and not like unofficial. It just doesn't look like it's ready for prime time. You know what I'm saying? Like, no offense to the Cashy OS users, but the default on the live version It looks like some kind of tricked out racer mobile you'll see street racing at like midnight. I'm thinking like it's got like the lights on the bottom, and I'm out. This don't look like it's for me. Sorry. This looks way too like unprofessional. It looks too aftermarket, too custom paint job. I'm like, nah. I gotta go. I need something more factory, more stock. You know, like more basic, more like legit looking. None of this blingy. I don't know, like this weird. It just didn't appeal to me. I'm sorry. No offense to people who use CashOS. CashOS is very good. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, if I gotta spend like 10 minutes like redoing the UI, this ain't for me. Well, if the live is not testing it, then I don't know how you define what's a good live test. Like that's the whole point of live is to test drive it. The problem with Linux, man, is it's way too fragmented. So it's like, oh, cool, you can test drive Linux. You can't do this on Windows. You can't do this on Mac. But the reason why you need to be able to test drive is because there's too many distros. Frankly speaking, there's way too many fragmented distros. So you better be able to test drive it if you're trying to figure out what's the right one to use. And this whole thing about KDE and GNOME, how do you choose one from the other? Like, when I was installing Fedora, I nowhere did I ever see the option to choose between KDE and GNOME. Like, there was nothing in the installer that notified me that I could choose between KDE and GNOME. You literally go through the installation that you downloaded straight from Fedora's website, and you mount it. You have that Rufus installation, bootable USD. You try it and install it. Then you install it, and it's like, there you go. What do we do? There's like nothing. Fedora, there's nothing to choose. So, but anyway, for beginners, I think this is a good first choice for beginners, second choice for beginner, third choice for beginners. Especially if you're on a laptop. Man, Arch and Red Hat are both 36% each. No one voted for Susie. Is this KDE ISO like officially somewhere? Is it on the website? I'll have to look it up. You do realize that when I downloaded the ISOs, I'm doing it based off of Framework, and Framework is redirecting to certain ISOs. So I guess Framework is the one that's recommending the GNOME ISOs because those are the ones that they verify work with all of their hardware. Like their random things like the Wi-Fi 7 card or the fingerprint reader. Well, they linked to it. Let me see. So we go here. And you go, hold on. Okay, let's go to this. So, Framework Laptop 16. You go to installing Linux. And they're like, okay, a laptop for Linux. The Framework Laptop 16 is designed with Linux. We've purposely selected components with broad upstream support to ensure strong... Okay, this is basically code. For the normies who don't understand what the sentence is saying, they're basically saying they purposely selected components that they know that the newer Linux kernel supports. That's basically what they're saying. So then I like how they show you, oh, look, the fingerprint reader. See, they know who they're targeting. They're targeting people like me. The laptop must have a fingerprint reader. It must. I ain't got time to type in the password. Because if you're using like a really, really secure password, you know, like one that's got like all kinds of non-alphanumeric characters. I ain't got time to be typing that in all the time. Like a 24 character password. I really want to type that in all the time. So no, the fingerprint reader simplifies things immensely. So works out of the box, Fedora 43. Works out of the box, Ubuntu. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. This is like the movie Gladiator when Caesar's like doing like this or he's doing like this. So when I see the fingerprint reader, yeah, thumbs up, yeah, thumbs up. Like in Death Stranding 2, all those likes. So Bazite, man, now that's what I'm talking about. Bazite works out of the box. Compatibility, community supported. So Arch. You can't forget about Arch, but they say that requires setup. So it's like, okay, you got to do like extra things. Probably some kind of terminal commands or whatever. Oh yeah, I remember. You got to enroll. It's you do it through the terminal. It's not hard. It's just like you got to do the extra steps. So, but you got to keep in mind, what if you have to take into account, what if someone's a beginner? What if someone has no experience with command line, with Linux, and they want to try. They're willing to try. So it's like, do they really want to do this? Maybe. But I like that they're upfront with the user. It's like, hey, you want to run Arch, Cache OS, you can do it. It's going to require some setup, but it'll work. Nix, same thing. I don't even know, what is Nix based off of? Is Nix another Arch distro? Nix OS? They recommend certain kernels. See, look. Minimum kernel 6.15. Recommended 6.15 plus. Best experience latest. So I'm currently running, so here's what's kind of weird. My kernel on my Ubuntu 25.10 is actually newer. Well, actually it makes sense because Fedora 44 is older than Ubuntu 25.10. Actually, no, that's not true. 2604, I should say. I'm on 2604, the latest LTS. Ubuntu 2604 ships with kernel version 7.0. It's either 7.0 or I think 7.0. 7.0 or 7.1, but I'm pretty sure 7.0. So my framework desktop is running Ubuntu 2604 with kernel version 7.0. Nix is basically configuration as code distro. You maintain a YAML file. Oh. That's an even newer one then. If that's YAML based, that's even more new. Because Arch is like 2004. But you're telling me Nix is just straight up configuration as code? That's like running a router, man. That's like using a router for a desktop. That's what that sounds like. You aren't even gaming on a computer. You're gaming on a router. You're gaming on a router that's pretending to be a computer because it's using YAML files. When someone says YAML file, I think virtual machine or I think router. Or like a switch. But, okay, let's take a look. So it says here, Fedora 43 setup guide. Alright. So it says it's easy to do. There's only 19 steps. So it's like, okay, if you're on Mac, man, you can tell these guys know, man. They know that the Mac people, they're appealing a little bit more to the Mac people with their aesthetic. So it's like Mac gets step 1. Windows people get step 2. Rufus. They put Rufus on step 2. Oh man, Rufus is Rufus is always the thing. Why is Rufus always the thing? But they're like, first download Fedora. Okay. It takes you here. The leading Linux desktop. A beautiful, high-quality desktop featuring GNOME, built on the latest open-source technology. So, like, this is literally all I did. All I did was I went here. I have Rufus already, so I skipped the part with Rufus. And I'm like, okay, we'll go here, download this, download now, download whatever's in here, download, go on Rufus, do the Rufus thing, make a Rufus USB. That's basically all I did. And then I just go in. I didn't even do this because I don't care about this thing, the Linux. Personally, I think the Windows audio compatibility sounds better than the Linux one. The Linux one makes the speakers sound too tinny and lacks all kinds of bass. So I completely skipped this step. And then secure boot. Actually, I did it, but then I didn't like how it sounded, so I went back in, changed it to Windows, and it sounded better. So then secure boot. Yeah, I have that running. You know what? I think secure boot is what's preventing Hibernate from working. Because I can't get Hibernate working on my laptop. And I suspect that it's a secure boot thing that's preventing it. And then boot to the live Fedora USB. Yeah, you do this. And here it is, installing the Fedora Workstation 43. Now, this link that they send you to, this straight up pulls the latest one of Workstation, which is basically Fedora 44. So I ended up installing Fedora 44. And then that was it. It was so easy. You know, like you go here, you connect to the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 7 just straight up works. You don't have to do anything. It's like, okay, it just straight up works. How nice. It just works like it's supposed to. Touchpad settings, if you don't like the Linux way of secondary clicking and you want your Windows style right click on it, which is what I need to have because of muscle memory, so I had to change that. Configure the fingerprint reader, and this is what I mean, man. No terminal required. No terminal required to get the fingerprint reader working. It's so easy. It's like setting up an Android phone. It's so easy. Who would have thought? Oh my goodness. It's so easy. And then it's like, okay. If you have an NVIDIA GPU, here's the thing. Because if you got NVIDIA, you got to go the extra mile. Everybody knows NVIDIA treats Linux users like they're steerage third class. So you got to go in. You got to set up the mux. If you want it to be discrete only mode, if you want it to be in hybrid graphics mode, you got to set that up. Then you got to go GPU mode, blah, 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 all this stuff. Then you got to go switching to integrated to get that mode running so you get the dual. You got to get where's the part with the NVIDIA driver, though? Because you got to go and get the NVIDIA driver. I don't think the Fedora ISO has it. You're doing all this random... I guess you do all this random stuff first? Where's the step to download the NVIDIA driver? Is it automatic? Is there like a... I never saw a sudo command. Where's the command to go pull the NVIDIA driver? Huh? NVIDIA, the above steps, blah, blah, blah. Click here. Just follow the links to your framework 16. Okay. Oh my goodness. Is this it? I don't know. Ryzen AI? What's the difference? Ryzen AI? This has nothing to do with NVIDIA. Oh, wait. Installing NVIDIA. Oh, here it is. Here it is. NVIDIA. Okay, that's the step. So the step to do NVIDIA's driver is step 10. Okay, so they do have it in there. That's good. Okay. See, I avoided all of this because I didn't want to spend extra money for an 8GB 5070. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait for the next generation of NVIDIA. I'm going to get the module for GeForce 60 series. Or whatever the new AMD one is. Whichever one's first. So I'm okay skipping the lame 5070, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm not really missing out on much there. On another 8GB GPU, yeah, I think I'll pass. So skip all of this. But the thing is, it's fully documented, it's easy to follow. They're doing a great job, man. Like, good luck finding this level of detail on trying to set up like a Linux laptop from like HP or Dell. Just saying. You know? So, and then they've got like the whole... Man, the fact that most people that buy these are actually running Linux is surprising. Actually, not surprising. They do have a lot of people running Windows, but I don't really see the appeal of buying a framework laptop just to put it together just to run Windows on it. I'm not saying you can't do it. You can absolutely do it. But and if you're gonna use it as your primary gaming machine, you're probably gonna have to if you play games with anti-cheat. So but that's why dual booting is a thing. Yeah. Let's look at the Bazite instructions. Who here has experience with Bazite? We're gonna end the poll. Alright, so most people are on a Red Hat distro, second Arch, then Debian. See, I don't know if I agree with that, because most people who just want to play the games, they're gonna buy like a gaming laptop from like Micro Center or Best Buy. You know what I'm saying? They're just gonna do that, and they're just gonna like, because they may use the cross launcher tools for like optimizing the fan profiles and things like that gaming laptops come with. You know, like Legion has like their fan control system and their power, like turbo mode. Omen has the same thing. You know, that kind of thing. So, man, Bazite looks so good, though. I'm so, like, tempted to install this. I just don't want to waste... See, the reason why I don't like Bazite is it's immutable. It's immutable, but I really like the way that KDE looks. The KDE plasma of Bazite looks so good. It looks so Windows. Oh my goodness, it looks so Windows good. It's got that Windows good. You know what I'm saying? Look at this. Look at that Windows good. Oh man, this is the Bazite. Welcome to Bazite. Where you can't screw anything up. How nice. This is actually, you know what? I think I would put Bazite probably in second place for beginners over Fedora, because with Bazite, it's immutable, so you cannot, like, brick your OS. You can't, like, mess it up. You can't sudo your way. You can't sudo the OS into the graveyard. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so durable. So this is actually a very beginner-friendly version. And if you're like a gamer and you like that Windows style, get that KDE Bazite, man. Get that KDE Bazite. If you love that Windows. Microsoft Power. Support Microsoft by installing Bazite. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing. It's got that vibe. It's got that Microsoft vibe while not being Microsoft. Look at that. Whoa, wait, what the heck? Mac? What is this? Hold up, KDE or GNOME? Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. KDE? KDE looks like a professional VFX visual. Like, this is like the people that work in the Hollywood. Not KDE, GNOME. GNOME has the look. GNOME has that Mac look. What is this? This looks like this looks like they just took Windows 10, because Windows 10 was discontinued last year, or was it 2 years ago, when Microsoft was like, everybody on Windows 10, you must upgrade, or you must go away. So then the people who went away, they took it. KDE Plasma equals Windows 10 with the Linux kernel. Whoa, 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 whoa. What is this? But this GNOME look, man. The GNOME look. The GNOME look looks like the professional one. This must be the version of Linux that all the Hollywood people use. Bazite GNOME. Bazite GNOME. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That looks so good. Oh my. Did you see this? Yeah, I think the GNOME one looks better. You know the crazy thing? Here's the crazy thing. The more I use Linux every day, the less I want to use Windows. it's having this weird effect on me. And I got to be very careful with this because it's like the more you get addicted to the Linux like UI, in my case the GNOME UI, the more I don't like the Windows UI. And I got to be careful because GNOME tends to make their style more like Apple. And Apple is the one thing that I have maintained a strong resistance to. I have resisted Apple for so long. It's like a Jedi resisting the dark side. You know what I'm saying? So, but the thing is, when you use GNOME on Linux, it's basically like Mace Windu using Vapid. He's tending toward the dark side. He's going so close to the dark side without actually turning to the dark side. That's the danger of using GNOME. The more I use GNOME, the more it appeals to me, the more it's like it's tempting me to switch to Mac. Be careful though. It seems kind of like Mac though. If you're on Ubuntu and you put if you're on Ubuntu GNOME and you move the taskbar from the default left side down to the bottom and center line, oh man, it looks a lot like the Mac. Be careful, it looks a lot like the Mac, man. Watch out, man. If you're running Ubuntu GNOME, oh man, the force is strong with this one. Yeah, man, you gotta have that Mace Windu lightsaber. You know what I'm talking about? Mace Windu lightsaber. Right? It's like, be careful. Don't go to the dark side. Be careful, guys. Gnome. Oh, man. This is like the movie stars right here. That's just down to the file manager. There are only 3 main ones. GNOME, KDE, and some other random thing that I have never heard of. If I install a different file manager, am I at risk of breaking my operating system? I already broke my Fedora once. So if you guys remember, when I did the live stream 2 nights ago, I think it was Tuesday night, we were live streaming on Fedora. I went to the rolling upgrade, the pre-release Fedora 45 with the latest kernel. That latest kernel had some severe hardware bugs with the power management system on my laptop, to the point where if the laptop is sitting idly, doing nothing, it can literally hard lock. It can literally hard freeze. And I'll have to hold the power button to shut it off. At first I was thought, do I have defective RAM? So I ran memtest 86 for like 4 hours, and it had like no errors. So I'm like, okay, I know my RAM is good. The other reason why I didn't believe my RAM was faulty was because I took that RAM out of an HP Omen Max 16 gamer laptop that RAM had been working in that HP laptop totally fine for like 6 months. So I knew the RAM was not the problem. So I was thinking either framework has some kind of firmware bug, or I broke my operating system when I updated on the fly to Fedora 45 pre-release edition, and I think the kernel was like 7.1 something. And something broke. So I tried a couple things. I tried to check Mesa drivers. It's like, no, you're on the latest. Sudo this, check the like library. No, nothing's there. Like uninstall DaVinci Resolve because it wasn't working. That didn't fix it. And it's an intermittent weird thing where it hard crashes. So it hard locks basically. So I basically was like, you know what? I don't have too many things installed on this yet besides Steam and a few games that we tested. So I am going to literally wipe it clean, completely re-image, like blow up and nuke the whole drive, start over again with Fedora 44. I did that, and since I've done that, I have not had a single problem with my Fedora 44 installation. So yeah, sometimes you don't want to be on the bleeding edge. So this is the reason why I kind of don't like rolling releases. because especially if they're not really testing the stuff. Because if you're on a laptop, man, you could break the power management. You can mess so many things up if you change the kernel. So yeah, I don't recommend the latest and greatest. I feel like if you're on a desktop though, like a random desktop that you put together yourself, you're far less likely to encounter these problems because desktops don't have the weird nuanced firmware that laptops have for power management, especially because of the whole battery thing. Um, so that was one thing that I ran into. But like, I don't know if changing to KDE would change that. I highly doubt it would. Dash to panel instead of dash to dock. Dash to panel. Okay. Okay. I may have to look into that. Who here wants to install Bazite though? I think I feel like Bazite on a framework 16 would be like super good. This is probably really good for stuff like I don't know, BeamNG. You know what I'm saying? Like you probably run BeamNG on it, assuming it would actually run. NVIDIA DGPU. You can get a 12. You can pre-order one of these with a 12 gigabyte RTX 5070, mobile, upgradable, modular GPU. Bazite does have that gamer look, though. You know what I'm saying? Look at the background. Look at that background. That's straight up. That's the typical like gamer that plays like Genshin Impact for 12 hours a day. You know what I'm saying? It's either BeamNG or Genshin Impact. Touchpad settings. Configure the fingerprint reader. Oh, look! Bazite fingerprint reader. Oh, because it's Fedora. It's the same thing. It's Fedora. It's going to work the same. That's good. Okay, that's cool, man. Bazite. This is really good for beginners. That looks like KDE right there. That does not look like GNOME. Wait, what are they using? Is that some kind of like video editing software? Oh, digital painting. Krita. Huh. I need to look into that because I need to find a good paint alternative for Linux. Gaming. Bazite. Yeah, man. This looks good. This looks so gamer. You gotta set up that NVIDIA Optimus. You gotta go in and turn on that hybrid mode. For that, everybody wants that 12-hour battery life. Go turn on that hybrid mode for that 12-hour battery life. You know what I'm saying? Update that firmware. Okay, I already did all this. But yeah, okay, that's cool, man. I might try out Bazite. I might try it out. I could install it on my second M.2. I got two M.2s in this laptop. I can put it on the other one. Try it out. Krita is decent for illustration. GIMP is the painted alternative, in my opinion. GIMP has all. I have GIMP on Windows, and it's kind of. I mean, it's good, but it's, just to do what I do with Paint for like live streaming, I just feel like GIMP has too many extra steps compared to just basic Paint. That's good, man. These guys make it easy. Do they have a guide for like Arch? They do? What? You could use the same guide for Cache OS probably. Difficulty level moderate, but it's less steps. Rufus, you gotta always Rufus this thing first, and then you gotta turn your audio if you care to do that. You honestly, guys, you don't have to do this. For those of you with Framework 16, personally, I changed mine back to the Windows EQ settings. Basically, what this is, for those wondering what this step is, they have a built-in in their firmware for their speakers. They have a custom EQ profile that they've programmed in the firmware for. There's basically two different equalizers. One is labeled Linux, one is labeled Windows. The Linux one makes the speakers definitely sound louder on the low end, like meaning the lower volume sounds louder, but it makes it sound way too, like, the trebles are way overdone on the Linux equalizer versus the Windows one. So the Windows one, you get better bass, but your highs sound way softer. So the audio can, depending on Depending on what you're listening to, if you're on Linux and you're using the Windows EQ, the audio can sometimes sound kind of like muffled. Not distorted, but like muffled. So, and I've certainly experienced that, but personally, I prefer the Windows EQ setting over the Linux one as someone running it on Linux. So, I recommend the Windows EQ. So, I personally recommend skipping step 3 of this, but you need to test it for yourself because you might disagree and you might prefer the Linux EQ. I tried the Linux EQ. I did not like how it sounded. It sounded way too tinny and way too trebly. So I went back to the Windows one, and it definitely sounded better. So, like, especially listening to podcasts on the laptop speakers. I tested it with Digital Foundry because Digital Foundry has like 3 different guys that have different very distinctly different voices, and the Linux EQ makes their voices sound way too like nasally and high pitched. So the Windows one makes it sound way more normal. So I kind of think the Windows EQ is the one I recommend for Linux. It sounds weird, but that's because they named it these things. Installing Arch. What is that? You got to go to the grub loader. They're using a PNY USB drive. They got an Ubuntu already installed. They got Ubuntu already installed on here, but they're gonna install the grub, run the thing over here. I don't know what this is about. Okay, that's the thing. Okay. Insert the USB drive. Hit enter to boot into the install Arch Linux. This is a distribution of Linux that expects you to build to suit, so you will want to utilize the Arch Wiki to get your bearings on how to install it. If you wish to fast track your install and avoid manually doing each step manually, there's a helper library called Arch Install designed to speed up the process. Yeah, Arch is very, very hands-on and very command line heavy. If you're someone who is a beginner and you don't like command line, or if it's scaring you, Arch is probably not going to be the best choice. Instead of installing Arch, I highly, if you want to run an Arch distro, I highly recommend Cashy OS. Cashy OS. It is based off of Arch, and it is way more easier. You don't have to worry about the command line if you're just trying to get things running. So I highly recommend Cashy OS. Yeah, because you got to do all the Pac-Man stuff. Okay. Fedora is DNF based. So you're going to be doing sudo DNF this, sudo DNF that, DNF this, DNF that. Ubuntu is APT based. Sudo APT, sudo APT, sudo APT, APT, sudo APT. And if you're on Arch, it's Pac-Man. So it's sudo Pac-Man. Like right here. Sudo Pacman -s NVIDIA open to install the NVIDIA discrete GPU drivers. NVIDIA open. Install NVIDIA utils. Nuvio. What is this? Oh, this is for the blacklisting, loading the necessary kernel modules. Okay. So loading before the NVIDIA module. NVIDIA mode set, NVIDIA UVM, NVIDIA DRM. Yeah, see, there's a lot of extra steps on Arch to get the NVIDIA driver going. It's just a bunch of pseudo commands. This is what I'm talking about. Like a pseudo command. Sudo Pacman this, sudo Pacman, NVIDIA open, blah, blah, blah. And then put something in the etc. Okay, the conf file. So yeah, understanding the modes. Here we go again with the Optimus. Okay. Really good though, man. Like no other vendor is gonna do this. No other vendor is gonna show you all these steps. It's like you want to run Linux, okay. Go ahead, man. Don't open any support cases with us. We don't want to talk to you if something goes wrong. That's on you. That's the attitude. All right, what is this NixOS? Oh, this is the one that's like. Oh, how is this gonna look? Because this is like all as a code. You still do the Rufus. Okay. Wait, that UI looks pretty cool. That UI looks pretty cool. How popular is it? I've never even heard of this distro. Nix OS. Why would someone want to use this over like a Fedora-based distro? Like, what is the use case for these what is it? OS as code or whatever? Like, you have no problems with Pac-Man? The R thing is just not for me. Wow. Wow. I don't know. Man. Really? Okay. So... Okay. You just made me think of something. I just thought of something. So, what you're telling me... Hold on. Let's get this out of the way. So, there is this thing called... How do you spell Ansible? Ansible? Ansible. Ansible, Puppet, Chef, and Salt Stack. Is it one word? I never remember. I think it's one word. Salt Stack. Ansible, Puppet, Chef, and Salt Stack. These are some things that the gamers probably have no idea what I am doing. Like, no, like, what is this? Like, these are random English words. So when you talk about Nix OS as like what was it, infrastructure as code or something, it made me think of it like it makes it sound like it's declarative. Where Ansible is procedural. Puppet is declarative. Declarative? I think that's the correct spelling. Declarative. So basically, you're telling me Puppet... Basically, NixOS is like a Puppet style. Chef is also procedural. Salt Stack, I think, is declarative. Do these terminologies mean anything to you guys? Or or is everybody completely lost? Did I just lose everybody by mentioning these four things? If so, we're going to forget about what I just wrote and we're just going to move on. If no one understands what we're talking about now, because the intention is not to confuse beginners. And this is like now way, way deep. We just jumped into the deep end of the swimming pool. No, Ansible is definitely procedural. It is absolutely procedural. If you try to take a certification test and you answer declarative, you're going to get the test question wrong. I can guarantee you that. It is definitely procedural. Anything step by step is procedural. No, chef uses cookbooks and recipes. Cookbooks. Recipes. Recipes. Can I not spell? Recipes. Oh my goodness, I can't English today. Yeah, Puppet is declarative. Meaning you tell it stuff, you declare what the output should be, and that's basically how it is. You don't give steps of how to get from point A to point B. Ansible and Chef are procedural because Ansible Ansible uses something called playbooks. Playbooks. The Puppet has Puppet Master that declares the way things should be. SaltStack uses Minion. It is also declarative. Yeah, you declare an end state. You declare like a condition or an end state. You're always looking at like what is the outcome? What is the expected outcome? What is the expected output? That's declarative. That's not like that's different from procedural where you're literally like directing it like step 1. Syslog message comes in. Step 2. Do this thing. Yeah. Well, if I just confuse people, I think we just confuse the entire audience. Like I think most people have no idea what's going on now. Like, guys, forget it. Like, okay, these aren't Linux distros. These are, oh man, I almost said framework, but that might confuse people because of the whole framework laptop thing. These are concepts. They're not concepts. They're, oh man, what are these things called again? I forgot what they're called. Man, what? I gotta Google this. What are these things called? What is Ansible and Puppet and Terraform and Chef and all these guys? What are they called again? Open source IT automation tools used for configuration management. That's what these things are. We're talking about IT tools, guys. Yeah. That's why when you said, yeah, so I was like, wait, hold up. Nix OS literally sounds like an IT automation tool as an operating system. Ansible is using YAML. Puppet is using Ruby, I think. Chef uses some form of Ruby in the config or something. I forget, and I completely forgot what SaltStack does. I think SaltStack is also using YAML or something. But yeah, these are like, people are probably so lost, man. We're going into like an area that has really nothing to do with like Linux. I mean, okay, kind of it does, but not really. It has nothing to do with gaming. It has nothing to do with any of this stuff. So we're probably going to like move on. We're probably just going to table this discussion for another time. If people are interested in IT automation concepts and tools, we can probably do an entire Tech Thursdays on these 4 things. There's another one called Terraform, which I didn't even mention. But these are like very specific specialized technologies that exist behind the scenes that are quite fascinating, really, when you're trying to understand how things work. Like, okay, for example, cloud gaming. We all know subscription-based cloud gaming is probably the end game in NVIDIA and a lot of game developers' minds. At least the bean counters at the top of the companies. A lot of them want cloud gaming to take off. They want gamers to no longer own their own gaming PCs because, or at the very least, they want that number to be reduced dramatically and the conversion rate to cloud-based, like streaming your games from the cloud, gaming in the cloud. Why do they want this? There's several reasons why. Where can I write this? Why cloud-based gaming is better. Why is it better? Number 1, no more people complaining about game crashes. So the developers don't have to listen to people complaining on the Steam forums about how their potato can't run the game and it's crashing. Bad optimization, bad optimization. The game UE5, my 1060 isn't able to get 60 FPS at 1440p. Bad optimization, bad optimization. GTX 1060 is the best GPU in the world. I can't get 60 FPS, bad optimization. So they want that mentality needs to stop. And one way you get rid of those people, convert them over to subscription-based cloud gaming. So those people disappear overnight when you control the gaming in the cloud. So that's number one. Number two, standard hardware setup. No more like randos with like ancient GPUs, old GPUs, middle-aged GPUs, brand new GPUs with broken drivers. You know, like no more of this nonsense. So like day one, first week launch, smooth sailing. Everyone's gaming in the cloud. Everybody's happy. No more people whining about the game running terribly on their whatever setup, or their unstable undervolt, or their unstable overclock. You know, like, and they're thinking like it's the developer's fault that they put a negative 45 as their undervolt and they expect their PC to be stable. You know, like, unrealistic expectations are just user error. So standard hardware setup, so less likely for things to be broken on day one, and easier post-launch updates, so they don't have to like do as much regression testing because they're not responsible for all these different hardware configurations. They don't even have to test. Less QA required because you don't have to test like 5-year-old graphics cards, 2-year-old graphics cards, 3-year-old graphics cards, brand new graphics cards. You don't have to test all these different hardware combinations because it's the same setup in the cloud. So it becomes easier. You know what I'm saying? So this is the reason why cloud gaming is kind of the future in a way. So there's a lot of reasons why developers and publishers want cloud streaming, subscription-based gaming to become the norm in the future. Because of these are just some of the reasons. There's a lot of other reasons, but these are some of the reasons. No, there's still going to be load times. There's still going to be load times because you're going to have to connect and you're going to have to do like the big 4-way handshake and all that stuff. So you're going to have to authenticate to the server. So no, there's still going to be that. But it'll be easier because it'll be more like Mac. It's like one setup and that's it. There's none of this stupid, like, someone's randomly undervolting their computer and it's unstable. You know, like, there's none of that anymore. So a lot of those problems go away. Because what I've realized is sometimes people have legitimate problems with the game being broken on day one. But oftentimes, more than likely, the people making noise on Steam forums about a game being poorly optimized are people who are either playing the game with unstable overclocks, or the RAM is faulty, or just something's wrong with their computer. They have a hardware problem that they don't want to admit to or they're unaware of. They're legitimately unaware they have a hardware problem, and they're complaining about the game being a problem. Because for every rando that's like, the game is crashing, and then they give their specs, it's like, and then the next person who replies is like, it's something on your end because I'm playing the game just fine. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, obviously, there's usually some degree of QA that goes into making sure the game is ready for launch. But sometimes things just slip through the cracks and there are legitimate problems. But with cloud-based gaming, you're far less likely to have things slip through the cracks because, you know, it's one hardware configuration that is very, very easy to test. And it doesn't deviate from how everyone will play the game. So that's one thing. But, okay, going back to these things. So these tools are what can be used. Stuff like this can be used to help automate a lot of the tasks to make this run at scale. Because one of the biggest problems with cloud streaming, cloud-based game streaming, the amount of infrastructure required to support the numerous thousands of gamers, hundreds of thousands of gamers that have to connect to the server, not only to play the game if it's a server-based game, like a multiplayer game, like Battlefield, for instance, but to also render the game in the cloud, push the bandwidth necessary down to the end user, and have that be reliable and consistent enough to provide a low latency gaming experience. That's going to require a lot of heavy lifting from a hardware and a network standpoint. So that's where these things come into play, because these things will work behind the scenes at automating a lot of the configuration management. So for example, if GeForce Now needs to roll out another data center because they're growing like 3x every month because everybody's going cloud gaming and no one wants to own their computer hardware anymore. They don't care anymore. It's like they give up on Blu-ray, they give up on DVD, just pay for Hulu, just get Netflix, blah, 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 whatever. Just get GeForce Now. Who cares about Steam? Who cares about buying games? It's like if that mentality becomes the norm, they're going to need these automation tools to scale up their data centers so that they can actually support the influx of users that are signing up for the service. See, that's kind of what those things are for. I'm just kind of give people some context of what these things, these random things that people are probably super confused what's happening right now. What are those things? Those things are not necessarily Linux. They're basically automation tools used by IT for network deployments at scale, so that you don't have to manually configure everything by hand one by one. So you're going to be using a lot of like YAML and a lot of like JSON and Python scripts and that kind of thing. So if you're someone who is interested in that, we can go into that more in depth in the future. That is definitely not what I wanted to talk about though. But interesting tangent though. All right, so we've kind of discussed Linux, my experience with it so far. I feel like Ubuntu is the most user-friendly, easiest to use for someone who has never used Linux before, someone who doesn't know what a sudo command is. I highly recommend Ubuntu. And then second place, Fedora. There's a lot of support for it online. One thing I will say, if you're someone who is new to Linux and you don't know that you can use the built-in app store built into Linux, and you think you have to, like, I can totally understand, like, if someone's coming to Linux from Windows and they want to install Steam, what are they going to do? They're going to open up the web browser and they're going to Google Steam and then download Steam from the Steam website. Well, guess what? If you do that, what does Steam do? It downloads a Steam. What does it do? Steam.deb. 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 And then guess what? They installed Fedora, or worse, they installed Cache because people kept telling them, get Cache, get Fedora, don't get Ubuntu. Don't get Ubuntu. Ubuntu's lame. Get Fedora, get Cache. But then they go off on their own. Let's say they install Fedora, and then they go to, like, they open up Firefox, because that's the browser that ships with the distro. They open up Firefox, they want to install Steam, they download Steam.deb, and then they're like, okay, they double click on it, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. It can't open the file. Oh no, panic, anxieties, heart rate's raising, blood pressure's going up. What, did I do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. What the, huh? What's going on? Nothing's happening. Steam.deb, what's going on? What's going on? Why can't it run? What's going on? What's going on? It's broken. I didn't even do anything. What? Guys, this is the reason why. Because of Steam's fragmentation, these kind of teething issues are the reason why Windows ain't going anywhere. Windows ain't going anywhere. Microsoft can rest peacefully at night. Nothing's going to happen. We're not going to lose all our market share to Valve and Linux and the SteamOS, because when the guy goes to his Discord friends and he's never used Linux before, and they tell him to install Cashy OS or Fedora, Microsoft knows. Phil Spencer knows. You go to Steam in Firefox, and you're on Fedora, or you're on Cashy OS, and you download Steam. It's gonna download a steam.dev. It's gonna download a steam.dev, and it's not gonna be able to install because it's a steam.dev. But here's the thing. And they'll figure out why. Okay, that's a learning experience. That's a good experience to learn why that doesn't work. But if they listen to the GTR, GTR said, if you're a beginner and you've never touched Steam, you've never touched Linux before, I highly recommend Ubuntu because your muscle memory habits of Googling for all your apps will at least when you download the thing, you will actually be able to install it. Because steam.deb means Debian. It'll only work on a Debian distro, which means it'll only install on something like Ubuntu. It will not install on these guys. You need something else. You need a different type of file. I'll give you another example. Discord. Although I think Discord will do a Flatpak now. You download Discord. Same thing. From the website, discord.deb. Oh my goodness. But I think at least Discord, will download a... I think it will do a Flatpak or something. But anyway, I can't remember anymore. But it's funny because I saw this exact behavior myself. I was like, wait a minute, what? I'm coming in to Steam from a Red Hat and it's downloading the deb. Why is it downloading the deb? Where's my RPM? But it's like, okay, the website will it recognizes your like kernel 6.19 or 7.0 or whatever. So it's like, okay, push our Linux like download file. Okay, well, what is that? Steam.deb. So yeah, even though we're on Fedora, it still downloads a .deb. So this is the reason why the mass market appeal, the one that has the big numbers in terms of usability, often wins out when it comes to just like the public-facing random like browser-based download files. So that's something that I noticed. It's kind of weird. So what you would do to install these things, you can install it from the terminal. But remember, we're talking about beginners. We're talking about people who have never used Linux before. Because the goal is to get people to switch to Linux. I don't need to tell people who already know how to use Linux how to use Linux. I don't need to tell those people how to install Steam. There's like different ways to install Steam. You can literally install Steam from the command line. And that would be the easiest way to do it. Well, that would be like the most like bulletproof way to do it, to make sure it does it correctly. But if you do it from like downloading it from the browser, oftentimes what I've found is Debian based distros are just the go-to defaults. Another example, the other day, I wanted to test another browser because Firefox is a good browser. It ships with Fedora. So I downloaded the Opera browser. Same exact thing, man. I click the download button. It knows I'm on Linux and it downloads the opera.deb. I'm like, oh my goodness, .deb. .deb is like everywhere. Like, what is going on here? So it's like, I might as well just not even use the web browser to look for anything. Just use the built-in store app. So, and the built-in store app does a good job. So that's probably what I would recommend beginners do. Yeah, but the problem is, remember, you're talking about random people, random gamers who are willing to give Linux a shot, and we're not talking about programmers. These people do not necessarily have programming or CS degrees. They don't have they may or may not have a lot of IT experience. They're not familiar with the command line, and even if they are, they don't necessarily always want to be living in the command line. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to always have the terminal window open. So, Uh, but again, there's the built-in store app. So I mean, that's kind of what you would do. And it sounds so counterintuitive because in Windows, I don't know about you guys, but I never use the Windows Store to download anything. But on Red Hat, you're probably, or on Fedora or CachyOS, you're probably better off using the built-in store. Just so you don't end up with the .deb files for like everything. Because it's like I can't tell you guys how many times I lost count of how many times I tried to download stuff. Like for example, well, the ones I mentioned, Steam downloads a deb file. I think Discord downloaded the deb file. There was OBS downloaded the deb file. Actually, no, that's not true. OBS recommended the Flatpak. Like it was like if you're on Fedora, download the Flatpak. But then there was problems with the Flatpak. So it's like I don't know. The problem is it's so fragmented. In truth, gamers don't want Linux even if they work in IT. Do gamers want Windows though? Would you say gamers like Windows? They love that Windows experience? What do the gamers want though? You're better off using the built-in store. Yeah, the built-in store is very good because at least it'll show you the different options. Like on Fedora, it'll show you the Flatpak, it'll show you the RPM version, and it'll also tell you if it's like OS administrator reviewed or if it's like third party or whatever. They're used to it, and 9 out of 10 won't bother to learn anything. Yeah, that is a problem. That is a problem. They're forced to use Windows. Valve is certainly trying to change that, but it requires some heavy lifting, man. Heavy lifting, because it's like Valve. Let's remove all these things that are confusing everybody. Valve has a lot of heavy lifting to do. Number one, gamers are lazy. As a result, loyal to Windows. Number two, developers, game publishers want cloud streaming to replace local client-based gaming. Number three, so that's like a whole nother thing that probably has really nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it's something that's happening behind the scenes. Number three, game developers don't care about Linux because they want their kernel level anti-cheat software. They love their anti-cheat software. So that's like that's a whole other thing. So you see, the thing is, Valve has so much heavy lifting. Valve is literally Frodo carrying the ring to Mount Doom. They're carrying the heavy burden. The burden is so heavy. They're carrying the weight on their shoulders of like so many lazy gamers that are just they're okay. Like, why do people have a problem with Windows? There's nothing wrong with Windows. Windows works great. Copilot Plus is awesome. Just get an AI PC. Just get with the times, man. Just get with the times. Like, what's wrong? Like, who cares? Who cares? Just use Windows. It's fine. It's good. Life is too short. It's good. You know, like, okay, game publishers. Who cares? Forget about this Linux nonsense. We need to move everybody to the cloud. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Now pay us our $35 a month. Pay us our $35 a month. GeForce Now, PlayStation Now, you know, Xbox Always, Xbox Cloud Gaming. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like Stadia. Come bring back Stadia, Google. You might as well bring it back because that's the future. Game developers don't care about Linux because they want their kernel level anti-cheat. This last point here, number 1 and number 3 are like the key things. Like number 3 in particular keeps even the Linux enthusiasts glued to Windows if they care about any of the games. If they play any of those games that have the kernel level anti-cheat, like if they play any Chinese gacha game, or if they play Fortnite, or if they play Valorant, or if they play like these type of games will hold the people to Windows until the day they die, or until the day the game dies. One or the other. Either the gamer's gonna die, or the anti-cheat, the company's gonna just shut the servers down. And Linux has like 90% market share. We're not talking about servers though. We're talking about how things are right now. If you want to get people off of Windows, you know, these are the hurdles. These are really big hurdles. You can't put them on, you don't want them, even if you go to cloud streaming, as a game publisher, I don't want the end user on Linux. I want them on Windows. Why? Because I want the telemetry data, and so I know how to like improve the game, like legitimately improve the game, because I need to see what the trends are in like player gamers' habits. So those are the sort of things that publishers are looking for. They need the telemetry data from Windows. They need to get that feedback. If you go to Linux, it's going to mess it up because it's going to like complicate the ecosystem way too much. You're just putting them into that fragmented place where it's like it's this big mess because it's this mumbo jumbo jungle of like all these randos on Arch distros talking like all this noise about how cachy or whatever. It's like Papa, Steam. Yeah, no, it's all a bunch of noise, man, to the game publishers at the end of the day. So it's like, no, keep them on Windows, keep them quiet, keep them satisfied. You know, they don't need to know what's going on behind the scenes. Who cares if the server's running Linux? It's not about that. It's about like keep the client connection to the cloud on Windows for that telemetry. Even though they don't have a big GPU in their computer anymore, they just need some basic computer to connect to the cloud with their keyboard and their mouse or their game controller. That's all it is. Cloud gaming servers will be... Yeah. No one said anything about Windows servers. This ain't about Windows servers. We're talking about the endpoint devices that are subscribing to the service. No one ever mentioned Windows servers. You're missing the point. The point has nothing to do with Windows in the servers. This ain't about Windows in the cloud. This is about why, like, the core of this discussion point is Valve carrying the heavy burden. Because Valve wants everything to be on... If in Valve's ideal world, Steam would be on Linux only, and all the gamers would be on Linux. No one would be on Windows. Steam would not even be on Windows. They don't even have to develop for it. They don't have to test for it. Like, that would be the ideal world. Now, that's not the reality, obviously. So, like, Windows is the biggest market. So, they're going to have to treat Windows with the highest priority. But, you see, the thing is, you look at what they say, and then you look at what they do. Everything they do, in terms of the being on the forefront of technology and what they're developing, all of their like pet projects, they're all Linux based. Steam Deck, Steam OS, Steam Machine. All of these things, Linux based. So what the hardware vendors are another thing. That's the fourth point. Hardware vendors. Hardware vendors primarily support Windows. in the consumer device market, gaming market. What do I mean by this? ROG Ally, Xbox Ally X. Oh, look, it's all Windows based. All those like numerous handhelds, they're all Windows based. You know, best example I can give you guys, when someone was asking me what handheld should they get? Should they get the Steam Deck or should they get the ROG Ally? This was a few years ago. This was before the Xbox Ally X. This was when it was just the ROG Ally. And I asked them what type of games are you going to be playing on this handheld? And they started listing some games. And then it got to the point where all of a sudden they listed this one game, Genshin Impact. As soon as I heard Genshin Impact, and then I'm like, okay, what about like Valorant? And they're like, well, probably not Valorant because it's like on a handheld. So then I was like, okay, Genshin Impact. Yeah, you're going to have to get that Windows-based handheld. Why? Because Genshin Impact, the anti-cheat level telemetry stuff that they have running, you can't do that on Linux. It won't work. So you got to go Windows-based gaming handheld. And that was the end of that conversation. They ended up getting an Ally. So this is how it is, guys. This is what I mean when I say hardware vendors primarily support Windows. You look at gaming handhelds. NVIDIA primarily supports Windows. They don't typically support... I mean, they do support Linux. But remember, it's always like second-class citizen. It's always like you're always getting the scraps, you know? Like, if you're a Linux user. At least from the NVIDIA experience. It's not like it doesn't work. It works, but it's like it's not the priority. So, and this is true for like a lot of the hardware companies. Like, you look at Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, all of them, all the peripherals, all the ecosystem, all the software that surrounds all of these different products. They're all Windows only. So, that leads me into like software vendor support. So this is like, okay, now we're leaning more into like peripheral territory and like enthusiast class software. So it's like hardware info 64, CPU Z. Although you can get CPU X. Okay, GPU Z. There are no, like, as far as I know, there is nothing that I have found, unless you guys know of something that I'm not aware of. I have yet to find something as good and comprehensive as Hardware Info 64 on Linux. Because this thing on Windows makes like all the Linux things just wannabes. I'm just saying. GPU Z also, there's no Linux equivalent to GPU Z that has that real-time telemetry, that fast clicking between. It shows you your VBIOS, shows you your driver, your rebar, is it on? Does it support certain CUDA or certain levels? What is your PCIe? Is your PCIe Gen 5 X16 or is it PCIe Gen 416? Is it PCIe 5.0? Like, this is the thing, man. Like, where are these softwares on Linux? Because Windows is just miles ahead in terms of the software support. Like, but this is enthusiast stuff. But I'm talking about, like, you know, your Corsair, your Logitech, your gaming third-party peripherals, accessories, you know, like your keyboards, your RGB keyboard softwares, your desktop RGB softwares, all these things. Yeah, you can find some equivalents of some of these things to work on Linux, but again, it's not just plug and play simple the way it is on Windows. This is the reason why the gamers, this ecosystem for the gamers is so strong. It's so strong. It's literally like a gravity well that it's like a black hole that just pulls the gamers toward it, and they just cannot escape it. There's not enough escape velocity to get away from this to get into the Linux. So it's like that's why, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see this changing anytime soon. Because we keep hearing about, oh, it's the year of the Linux desktop. It's the year of the mass exodus to Linux. I don't see it happening because the average normal gamer, your average gamer, just doesn't have the drive, or nor do they actually have the need. Realistically speaking, they don't really have the need to go to Linux, like especially going to Linux permanently. Even though it's a pretty good experience and it's a pretty good alternative, it's just, man, the power of Windows, and that's props to Microsoft. Because Microsoft has done a very good job maintaining that ecosystem, for the Windows platform, for the consumer market. It's like on the gaming side, Microsoft is the most dominant force in the gaming industry because they got all the gamers. They've got like 90% plus of all the gamers, maybe 95 or more percent of all the gamers globally. And then on top of that, you look at enterprise. Microsoft is dominating in the business world. Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft 365, everybody's using Outlook, everybody's using Excel, everybody's using PowerPoint. Microsoft is making the moves, man. Phil Spencer retired. What's her name? Asha Sharma. She's actually doing pretty good. She's doing a pretty good job, at least as far as I'm concerned. She's turning it around. They're gonna basically go to war with Valve. They're gonna shut Valve down, drop that momentum. Valve, you're trying to get those gamers to go away from Windows and go to your little Steam Deck, your Steam machine. You're trying to get them to go to your little puny little Linux. You're gonna go to your little Linux. Those gamers aren't gonna go. They're going to stay on the Windows. Just you watch. Xbox mode will keep them there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ultimately, there's nothing wrong with that. Why even consider Linux in the first place? Because of what the open standards stand for versus the closed wall garden you get if you're on like Mac or Windows. I mean, Windows is open on the hardware front. Closed on the software, open on the hardware. At least the approach. But Windows is very strong, man. You cannot, like, people... Recently, I've seen a lot of people criticize Microsoft or make fun of Microsoft, and I really don't understand why, at the end of the day. It's like all these people that criticize Microsoft... Okay, if you're going to criticize Microsoft and you continue to use Windows as your primary daily driver, that is the epitome of hypocrisy, if I have seen it. If I haven't seen it, that's what it is. Now I know. So you know what I'm saying? So it's like all these people hating on Microsoft Windows, complaining about Windows is trash, I hate Microsoft. All these people that do that, if they dare to say that and just continue to use Windows... Those people are just straight up hypocrites, as far as I'm concerned. Because Windows does a lot of things right. For the few missteps that they do a lot of things right. And there's this saying, there's a reason why things are the way they are. There's a reason why Microsoft is the 800-pound gorilla that it is in the consumer market and in the gaming space. It's not like they didn't do anything and just sat there or just dropped in their lap and they got lucky. No, it's not that at all. It's the hard work of continuing to push the ecosystem to be that way. Hardware agnostic, hardware open. Yes, it's x86, but it's hardware open. Unlike Mac, closed hardware, closed software. Linux just takes it one step further on the open aspect with the software side. they did things in the 90s. Well, no, I wouldn't say that, because if you, like, you compare Windows 11 and Windows 10 to, like, Windows Vista and Windows XP. First of all, Windows Vista, though it was bad, it introduced the search functionality that Windows 7 would benefit from, and ultimately carry the torch forward for the next generation of how a modern operating system should function. So, like, I remember when I switched from Windows XP to Windows 7. Windows 7 was so much better than Windows XP. Like, immediately it was better. First of all, 64-bit Windows 7, finally 64-bit was a thing, and you could finally use more than like 3.5 gigs of RAM or whatever. Like, you could go more than 4 gigs of RAM on Windows 7, 64-bit. 64-bit started taking off around that time. So Windows 7 was so good compared to Windows XP and Windows Vista. And that was like 2010 to like 2015. 2012 to 2016-ish was also like Windows 8. Yeah, Microsoft made missteps with Windows 8 because Microsoft tried to appeal to the tablet market and the mobile market. And why did they do this? Because, okay, we're done with Linux now. Let's talk about Microsoft. I didn't expect to talk about Microsoft, but now we're going to talk about Microsoft Windows. Because people need a history lesson in how Windows changed over the years. Microsoft Windows. Why is Microsoft Windows the most dominant gaming operating system? Let's discuss this. So, Windows. Do we really want to go that far back? Let's just start with Windows XP. Windows XP. Windows XP was where it started getting really good. Windows XP was when Microsoft Windows started really taking off. It was good in the 90s, man. Like 95, 98, 98 second edition, Windows 2000. Those were all really solid. But Windows XP was the true home run, man. Windows XP hit it out of the park. Windows XP hit it out of the park. It was so good. Windows XP. Then what happened? Vista. Windows XP was what? 2001? 2002? What year was Windows XP? Windows XP release date? 2001. Okay, I was close. October 2001. Okay, so basically it's the same age as like the original Xbox. So Xbox and Windows XP go hand in hand. 2001. Windows Vista, I think, was like 2006, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, January 2007 was the general public release. So then we had Vista in 2007. And then we had in 2000, was it 9 or was it 10? Windows 7 release date October 2009. 2009 was Windows. I'm just gonna put it like this. Windows 7. This one was so good. This one was so good. Vista wasn't terrible. Vista, unfortunately, was just ahead of its time in the sense that it was hardware heavy. Like, it needed a lot of hardware. It needed a lot of RAM in particular. And you have to remember, in this era, most applications were 32-bit native. Rarely did you find an application that actually had a good 64-bit version. But this was the time period where 64-bit applications were lagging behind hardware. Because if you remember, AMD 64, AMD launched the world's first 64-bit They launched the world's first like 1 gigahertz CPU, and then they also launched the first 64-bit architecture. Intel Intel tried to catch up with this weird like 32 plus 32 thing, which had a lot of drawbacks. So this is the reason why AMD 64 was so dominant. AMD 64 was the go-to CPU for WoW, for World of Warcraft, because it was so performant. Even though there was no like 64-bit apps, you could use the AMD 64-bit CPU with 32-bit apps, and you would still get blazing fast performance back in the day. So this is the kind of era that the Windows XP operating system existed in. Because I remember, I still have a Windows XP. I have 2 different Windows XP I think they're CDs. I think they're CDs. I don't know if they were doing DVDs back then. They're either DVDs or CDs. I have the 32-bit Windows XP and the 64-bit Windows XP. And I never used the 64-bit XP disk because of backwards incompatibilities with a lot of apps. Because it just didn't work. There was a lot of issues. So 32-bit XP was so dominant. And then you had Windows 7. Windows 7 was so good. And then you had Windows 8, which I think was 2012. If I'm not mistaken, it was October 2012. So then you had 2012, you had Windows 8. We're going to skip that 8.1. And then you had 10 in 2015. Win 10. And then Windows 10 had a long span. Then you had 2021. Windows 11. So it's a big 6-year gap right there. Windows 10 reigns supreme. So what I remember is XP was so dominant. Windows 7 was also very dominant. And Windows 10 was very dominant. You can see that's a big, long gap between those two. So those are the good ones. Windows 11's in a good spot today. I think it's really good now. It was not that good when it first launched, but the second year of Windows 11, it was very good. Windows 11 now, I think, is better than 10. Because they have, like, tabbed Notepad, and I feel like with Windows 11, I don't have to install Notepad++ on, like, every single PC that I use anymore. So that's really not... That's, like, a huge upgrade right there from Windows 10 to Windows 11. Windows 11's paint is trash, though. Windows 10... still had the best classic paint. The paint that I'm using right now is basically the Windows 10 paint on Windows 11, because the Windows 11 paint is trash. So there's some things that Windows 11 did not do good. But yeah, so you look at this, and it's like, they only had like 2 bad ones. They only really had like 2 bad ones in, what is this, effectively 20 years? 20 years of Windows dominance, and only 2. Technically, there's like a Windows 8.1, which is okay, but whatever. Oh, the 95 startup sound. I always thought the XP one was the best one, though. Wasn't it the best one? Anyway, the point I'm making is there's nothing wrong with Windows. Like, Windows is fine, and this is the mentality that I think most gamers have, and there's nothing wrong with that mentality. So Linux is great. Linux is a good alternative, but I think Windows is still very, very strong, and I think Windows is going to continue to be the gamer's choice when it comes to an operating system for years to come, because you're not going to like undo 20 to 30 years of dominance in the gaming market overnight with a Steam Deck and a Steam machine. Sorry, Valve. You know, the problem is the gaming. It's funny how the Linux ecosystem is so fragmented. The gaming ecosystem is also fragmented. You have gamers that are on Steam. You have gamers that are on Xbox, on PlayStation, on Nintendo, which is like kind of like a whole nother thing. Then you have the vast majority of gamers which are on none of those platforms. The vast majority of gamers are on mobile phones. Mobile phones. But I would say, I'm willing to say that most of the gamers that are gaming on mobile phones are probably not, they probably don't consider themselves like actual gamers. I could be wrong in that statement. I think there's a spectrum when it comes to mobile gamers. I think a lot of people that game on their phones are either like playing some random game that they don't really care too much about, or you know, maybe they're just playing like sprite-based Final Fantasy or some random like turn-based game on their phone or some retro game or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like whatever. It's trying to consider the mobile gamers as like actual hardcore gamers is probably not a thing, but it depends on who you ask. Some people that play on like tablets and phones and stuff might consider themselves a hardcore gamer, but I'm willing to say the vast majority of people who do that are probably not going to consider themselves a hardcore gamer. Does Linux work well with emulators? I actually have not tested that. That's a good question. I have not tested it. Maybe someone else who has more experience with that would be able to answer. I only recently started going like full time on Linux as of this week. I've used Linux in the past for like servers and stuff, but not for like, you know, stuff outside of work, just playing around with it and playing games on it. Only now have I made the switch. And so right now I have 3 different machines that are running Linux. I've got the Framework desktop running Linux. I've got the Framework laptop 16 running Linux. And I have an old Threadripper running an older version of Ubuntu, which we showcased a couple weeks back on a weekend live stream. The Gaming on Linux live stream, which is probably one of my most popular, most viewed gaming-based live streams that I've ever done. Because I guess people are interested in what gaming on Linux looks like. But it's like, spoiler alert, it's not actually that different from gaming on Windows. I don't know about that. You know what? The other day, one of my friends, so I told my friend to try Linux. One of my friends decided to try to install Ubuntu. Or, no, they didn't even try to install it. They tried to load the live version off of the USB. But get this. This is the specs of the P. It didn't work. Well, okay. He didn't wait long enough to even see if it would load up. He tried to load it. He went into the BIOS. He set to boot from the USB. And this is the specs on the computer. Sony Vaio. Intel Core 2 Duo. Mobile. This is a laptop. 4 gigabyte DDR3. Those are the specs. ATI. Radeon. What was the thing? I don't even remember what that thing was. ATI, Radeon, Sony Vaio. It was like a 4 Radeon HD 4650M or 4470M. I think it was like 40. It was Radeon HD 4570M or something like that, or whatever. It was some kind of weird ATI. It was like an ATI Radeon HD 4000 something mobile. Maybe it was a 44. I don't remember what the GPU. It was some kind of like ancient hardware. And the thing is, I was telling him, man, Linux is so good. It'll work on like everything. Just load it up. Just load that Ubuntu USB. Here it is. Ubuntu LTS 2604. Ubuntu LTS 2604. Just load it up on your old laptop. This laptop doesn't even have a battery. The battery dies in like 2 minutes. You know, like it charges from 0 to 100 in like 20 seconds, and then you unplug it and it like immediately discharges to 0 again. So it's hilarious. So it's like, try it out on this laptop. Sony Vaio 15.5 inch. It didn't work, guys. There is a limit to how old the computer can be at running a newer Linux distro. The problem was we got to the Ubuntu, and there's like a dot, and a dot, and it would just repeat dot, dot, dot. And it was like it was loading. It was like it was actively trying to load the GUI just to bring up the window so you could try the Linux live. And he didn't want to wait. I think he waited like 12 minutes, man. 12 minutes of the Ubuntu dot 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 with the Ubuntu purple colored screen in the background, and was like, I guess there's a limit to how far back you can go in time. Because this laptop, guess what? This laptop shipped with Windows Vista. This laptop was new in 2009. That's how old that laptop is, just to give people a reference. That was a 2009 laptop. 2 cores. 2 cores. I think it's 2 cores, 2 threads. No hyper-threading. I don't think the Core 2 had hyper-threading back then. Intel Core 2 Duo Mobile. Let me see, is it a dual core? Yeah, it's 2 cores, 2 threads. Yeah, that probably ain't gonna do it. It's not enough cores and threads. So it didn't work, man. I was so disappointed. I wanted to see it load up. It just couldn't do it. It was like, maybe if we wait long enough, maybe it might have taken like 30 plus minutes just to load up the USB into the RAM. Maybe it was like a RAM pro. I don't know. But it was like 4 gigs of RAM, DDR3. You know, it wasn't working. I think it was like DDR3. I can't remember the speed. It's like laptop RAM. DDR3 1066 or something. It was like 1066 DDR3 or something like that. Yeah, it was some old stuff. It was like really old hardware. Those were the days, man. Those are the days of like World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 1 and all those things, and Half-Life 2. The Vaio. Sony Vaio. That laptop is built like a tank, though. It's built like a tank. It's just the hardware inside just can't handle it. Oh, you're saying probably need 32-bit? It looked like it was loading. It was just really, really slow. Okay, maybe you have a point there, though. Well, no, you shouldn't need 32-bit. This is a 64-bit capable processor. So I don't think you need 32-bit, but maybe it'll be faster if the 32-bit. Huh. Well, I don't think it's 32-bit. You know why? Because he told me, I asked him, like, the laptop, on the laptop, there's a sticker for Vista. But he told me he did that upgrade back in the day. He did the free upgrade that Microsoft did. So he said the laptop, before he stopped using the laptop, it was on Windows 7 64-bit. So no, it's definitely not, I don't think you need the 32-bit. So no. Why did I get rid of the 1066? Yeah. So yeah, there's a limit to how far back you can go. In fact, I need to look up what the requirements are because we need to look for a different laptop. That's the thing that I've been trying to get people to do. I've been trying to get people to like find old computers that they don't use anymore, that they didn't like sell off or donate or whatever. Like find some old computers and try to install Linux on them. Or at least test drive it, and if you like it, then install it on there and you can continue using the computer as like a secondary computer because it's way outside, you know, like any computer that is basically on any of these operating systems is eligible for Linux because Microsoft doesn't support any of these operating systems anymore. So you can't get any support for any of these operating. There's no updates. So it's like, you know, that's probably why it's a good time to try Linux, because if you have like a 6-7 year old laptop or an old computer that you still have laying around, I mean, try Linux on it. That's like the easiest way. It's low risk. You know, the computer's old anyway. It's not a priority anymore. I mean, that's what I do with my Threadripper. My old Threadripper, I installed Ubuntu on it, and it works fine. So now I've done the opposite. Now I've gone 100% all in on Linux, and I have like new hardware that's running Linux on the bleeding edge with Fedora 44, like all the latest kernels and stuff. All right, well, I managed to somehow talk for like 2 hours and 40 minutes about this stuff. There was that interesting sidebar conversation about the random like automation tools that I wasn't expecting. But anyway, that's my experience with Linux. I just wanted to tell you guys, it's pretty addicting once you get used to how things are different from the way they are on Windows. The GNOME, I don't have a thing against the KDE Plasma or KDE variants, but I do think that the KDE UI looks a lot more like Windows, and it also looks it looks like Windows, but because it looks like Windows, it also looks like, how do I say this? It looks so like aftermarket. It just looks so unofficial and kind of messy to the point it just doesn't appeal to me. Like I'd rather use Windows if Windows is going to look like Windows than use a Linux distro that tries to look like Windows, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I looked at it when I was testing the KDEs. I was like, I don't like the way this looks. It just looks awful. It doesn't look awful. It just looks so like busy, you know, like. But at the same time, I don't like Fedora's bare bones. Like, we got nothing, no icons, no taskbar, like straight up nothing. It's like a screen. Like, okay. Okay. It's like, I guess if you like your wallpaper, I guess that's cool. So I don't know. So far, I'm starting to like Fedora more and more the more I use it. I'm trying to force myself to understand the workflow mentality or the workspace mentality of why it's so minimalistic. But so far, I still prefer Ubuntu's ease of use. Load a live USB to fix it. KDE's design trends are also early 2000s design trends. It looks archaic. Yeah, it just looks kind of messy, you know, like Windows 95 and Windows all the way up to like Windows XP. It had like all those buttons and stuff on the left side. There's like all these submenus on the left side. I don't know. I just didn't really like the look. I definitely preferred GNOME. Real quick, guys. Quick question. Pop OS? Or is it Pop OS? Is it Pop OS? Pop OS? I don't know how to spell it. Pop OS. Pop_OS. Is this... What is this? Is this Fedora or is this Arch? Pop OS. I guess I could Google the answer. Pop OS. Oh, it's actually... No wonder it didn't look right. No, I was like, man, something looks wrong. Something looks wrong. I was missing the exclamation mark. I was like, yeah, something doesn't look right. I'm trying to type it. I'm like, this doesn't look right to me. So I'm missing the exclamation mark. Okay. So what is this? Pop OS is, It's Ubuntu, but it's Debian? Oh, man. You know what, though? The thing about Debian, everyone's like, oh, avoid Debian. Dude, beginners, man, they go to the browser, they download Opera. Guess what? Guess what it automatically downloads? Opera.deb. Go to Steam. Go to Valve's website. Download Steam from the website direct, even though you're on Fedora. And what does it do? It proceeds to download Steam.deb. So it's like, for all these people, man, saying, oh, avoid Ubuntu. Now, if someone doesn't know what they're doing and they start downloading stuff off the browser, they're gonna end up with like deb files. I'm just saying. Even if they're not on a Debian-based distro. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Because I was like, really? Why does it keep giving me, like, these Debian files? Like, doesn't it know I'm on Fedora? Like, what is this? It's like, okay, fine, we gotta go to the store. We gotta go to the store and go find the RPM, or we gotta go find the Flatpak. So, at first I didn't like it, because it's like, why am I having to use the store to download all the apps? This just feels so, like, not how I'm used to doing things on Windows, because I don't use the Microsoft Store. Like, having to use the Fedora Store to download the apps is kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, Debian's good, man. Debian's good. Debian's got the big market share. There's a reason why when you go to download these files from the browser, they give you the .deb. They give you the .deb because they know what distro everyone's using. That's why. The store package manager is better because one update. Does anybody use the Windows Store? Yeah. I might start using the Windows Store. I don't like the way the reason why I don't use the Windows Store is because I don't like the way the Windows Store installs things. Like when you install Cinebench using the Windows Store instead of downloading Cinebench from the browser. I just don't like the way it installs things. I don't know. We'll probably try to do a live stream using Ubuntu LTS 2604 because Ubuntu currently I have the latest kernel on Ubuntu and I need to test game behavior on the latest kernel of Linux using the Radeon 8060S and a Ryzen AI Max. So I need to also look at the AI stuff. I need to get the AI apps installed on these Linux devices to see how it differs from Windows. Most of the AI stuff I've done has been on Windows. And for all these people saying, oh, for the best experience for AI, you gotta be on Linux, that remains to be seen. Maybe if you're talking about like 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago, yeah, maybe. But the thing is, the way things are now, man, running AI on Windows is so easy. And if you have a Copilot Plus processor, like a Ryzen AI 300 or a Ryzen AI Max, or I don't know if Panther Lake has the NPUs for that, or like the tops for that. But if you have one of those, man, the AI performance on Windows is great. The Windows install doesn't install real programs, it installs like sandbox. Yeah, so basically what you're telling me Windows Store installs Flat packs? Flat pack style? Is that why? Windows Store installs the flat pack version? Is that what it is? Oh my goodness. The flat pack. Flat pack. At least Flatpak though, the app is searchable in the super button. There's still okay. But they run in sandboxes though, so how is the Windows one different? That sounds exactly like a Flatpak. You know, if we had this conversation a week ago, I wouldn't even know what a Flatpak is. Because when I was on Ubuntu, I never dealt with Flatpaks. It was always .deb or .app, which is the most annoying one to deal with. Interesting. Yeah, Windows is interesting because it's like that one. It's the one that's like not Unix based. I feel like if you're someone who is on Mac, I feel like I I feel like it's easier for a Mac user to go to Linux than a Windows user going to Linux. Does that sound true? Is that true? It's easier for someone on Mac. The way I explained this to someone the other day was like Mac and Linux are like Spanish and Italian. It's like like if someone is like someone who understands Mac and like Mac's terminal is like someone who can speak in Spanish. And someone who understands Linux is like someone who speaks Italian. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the Mac user is Italian and the Linux user is Spanish speaker. The Windows user is someone speaking like German or English. So it's like way more different. You know what I'm saying? It's way different. So it's like it's like you're effectively having to learn a new language. Because the Mac and the Linux. So it's like, okay, think of it like this. I'll make another analogy. Latin equals Unix. Spanish equals Linux. Italian equals Mac OS. English equals Windows. That's the difference. That's the difference. So it's like these two come from the same like root language, Unix. And that's why they're similar. Oh, you're talking about the new one though, right? Similar terminal? It's still Unix based though. It's still fundamentally Unix based. But in general, somebody who understands Linux can easily adapt to Mac. Likewise, someone who understands Mac can easily understand Linux because they both share similarities in the same way Spanish and Italian share similarities. A Spanish speaker and an Italian speaker, someone speaking Italian can literally talk to someone who can speak Spanish in Italian, and if they talk slowly, and the Spanish person can literally reply to them in Spanish slowly, and the two of them can literally have a conversation they can have a coherent conversation with each other without even knowing each other's language. So this is why Linux and Mac are kind of similar in that regard. This is exactly the same. This is exactly my point. Spanish and Italian are similar in the way Linux and Mac OS are similar. Whereas someone who understands Windows, like command prompt, like CMD, you know what I'm saying? CMD. Yeah, it's true. It's true. If you can speak Spanish, you can literally go talk to someone who speaks Italian, and they will understand you. You have to talk slow. You have to talk slow. You just speak Spanish slowly, and then they'll wait for them to reply, and they'll reply to you slowly in Italian, and you can literally comprehend what they're saying. It's the same thing. Linux and Mac, because think of it, Spanish and Italian are of the Latin root. Long ago, when the world was unformed, there was this thing called Unix. It's kind of like Latin. It's the OG. From it, Apple created, well, okay, it wasn't called Mac OS back then. So, but it was, it was the Mac. It was, what did they call it? I forgot. But it was not called. It eventually turned into, what do they call it? iOS, and then there was the mobile one for the iPhone, and whatever. So so this is the reason why what I'm saying is true, guys. If you don't believe me on this, go ask someone who can understand Spanish. Thank you, HTZ, for validating what I'm saying, because I'm 100% correct in making this statement, and I'm also 100% correct in making this statement. But someone who only knows Windows, oh my goodness, good luck. You want to go into Linux? It's literally like an English speaker having to go learn Spanish, or go learn. If you're gonna go to Mac, you gotta go learn Italian, because it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like you gotta learn like all the bash commands and all this, the sudo, all these things. I mean, there is like some like rogue similarities between Windows and the Unix-based kernels, but the same way Windows borrows, or the same way English borrows some words from Spanish, Windows has borrowed some things. I think like dir, for example. Let me check dir. Let me go command prompt dir. Yeah, some very few things in Windows also work in Linux, like dir, for example. The same way the English language has imported some Spanish words, and the same thing for those languages. It's the same kind of thing. This is probably the most like human style analogy I can think of to relate these things. iOS is the mobile one. Well, it was called Mac OS X. It was Mac OS X for a long time. Yeah, the etc boot bin. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. Linux and Mac OS are way more similar to each other than Windows. Windows is that one off. That's just kind of like doing its thing. There's other operating systems out there as well that are lesser known, like the old PC DOS from IBM, which was actually made by Microsoft for IBM, which also is more like Windows, believe it or not, like under the hood, like the command, the structure. That would be like, I guess that would be like German. I guess that's like the German language is like PC DOS or something, or like MS DOS. Because English and German are actually more similar to each other than, yeah, I guess that's what we'll say. Okay, we'll put the German language in here. So German equals PC DOS / MS DOS? I don't know. I mean, modern Windows is definitely, there is similarity. But again, English and German are also have similarity. You just have to really think about it. And you can actually, like, if an English speaker listens to German, if they listen to it slowly, they can actually understand bits and pieces. They can actually pick up, with knowing no German at all, they can actually figure out some of the stuff that's being said. It's like, we'll just leave off MS-DOS so we don't confuse people. We'll just put PC-DOS. There. This is the old school OG IBM stuff. So anyway, guys, hopefully that is helpful for those of you that have been trying to understand what the differences are, how these operating systems relate to one another. Linux is actually not an operating system. Linux by itself is a kernel. The operating systems are things like Ubuntu and Fedora and those things. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. I didn't really have anything else to talk about. It was all about my experience on Linux. The what? The OS is GNU. The Linux kernel. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then all the distros are spawned off of those, or they're based off of those. Alright, guys. Well, I think that's basically it. Yeah, my experience has been a positive one. That's my experience has been positive overall. Now I know GNU. Why do people pronounce it that way? GNU. And why do people say GNOME? It's not GNOME. The way you pronounce it is GNOME. I've heard people pronounce this as GNOME, gnome, no, gnome, nom, not nom, gnome, gnome, GNOME. Oh, it's because of the GNU? What? I don't know, man. When I see this word, when I see this, I think this is pronounced gnome. I don't want to say GNOME. You know why? Because World of Warcraft muscle memory. This is a gnome from World of Warcraft. GNOME, I'm not going to say GNOME. I'm still going to continue to mispronounce it as gnome. I'm just going to purposely mispronounce it as gnome. GNU, Network Object Model Environment. GNU Network Object Model Environment. This is a thing from like the 70s or 80s. Like, I know that this is something that predates Linux. This is before Linus Torvalds made the kernel. You're talking about saying that's like from when was this thing? Like the 70s? Yeah, exactly. Every time I see gnome, I think it's like a random little gnome from WoW. I don't think of whatever that is. GNU Network Object. Wait, what? GNU is not from 1999. No, it's not. GNU is before. Linus Torvalds took the GNU thing before. Like, no. It was 70s, man. There's no way. Yeah, AI says GNU was initiated in January 1984 by Richard Stallman at MIT. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, you're talking about GNOME. Okay. You're talking about when GNOME was made. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna be like, man, hold on a second. Because I know Linux is newer than Mac and Windows. But the idea, like the GNU was not that much younger. It was developed around the same time that those two operating systems were really taking off. Or those were really getting built. Actually, no, not Windows. Windows came around, it was like a little bit before Linux took off, but Mac was already a thing. Like Apple was doing, like shipping Mac in 1984. And like Apple II and those things. And then Microsoft was contracted by IBM to develop PC DOS into what it became, and then what eventually became MS DOS, and then Windows spawned off of that. So, it's funny, like all these operating systems that we're talking about, They're all technology that is kind of all around the same age. Now, Linux is definitely the youngest, but like all of them are kind of like 1980s to the early 90s. Late 70s was really like when they really started, but no one really knew about them. They were kind of like projects in like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were like working out of his Steve's parents' garage and stuff. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Jobs, like Steve Jobs movie, the movie about Steve Jobs. That is actually a fascinating movie that shows how Apple got started. And I think that's a really, really good movie for anyone who aspires to be an entrepreneur. It don't even have to be a technology entrepreneur. Like just the way it portrays like the challenges, how to get those first investors, how to convince them, how to like improve the product when you get negative feedback. You know, it's a really, really good, fascinating movie about Steve Jobs, not just as a person, but like really how Apple got started. So, because it shows how like the operating system got started. Like Microsoft is referenced in the movie at one point. IBM started from Xerox. Yeah, GNU. Yeah. What's the Linux kernel based from? GNU. It's based on Unix and GNU. I did end up. I finally got this new phone. By the way, I got a new phone. I got this phone, guys. Check it out. My new phone. I set it up today. It was kind of easy to set up, but at the same time there was some problems that I ran into. Android is based off of Linux. Just FYI. I finally have an enthusiast phone again, because occasionally there'd be people that would go in my stream and ask me like what phone do I use, and I would tell them like a Sony Xperia, what is it, Mark One, Sony Xperia One Mark Three, and they'd be surprised at the phone that I'm using such an old phone because my phone is like 5 years old, and then I finally had to get a new one. So, because there's no more support for that phone, like there's no Android updates, there's nothing, and also Sony pulled out of the U.S. market, so there's literally like zero support. Uh, so unless you're like a true Sony enthusiast, you just want to use the phone for whatever. So I was like, okay, fine, I have to get a new phone, and I ended up getting this one. So I finally have like a true enthusiast phone again. You guys can see what it is. I'm not gonna actually say what the phone is. If you guys recognize this phone, you can tell the chat what it is. But this is my new phone, and I like it. It's really good. It's running the latest Snapdragon Elite 8 Gen 5. It's got 16 gigabytes of that LPDDR5 Supreme and 512 gigabytes of internal storage. It unfortunately does not have a 3.5 millimeter phone jack, or not phone jack, audio jack, phone jack. Yeah, it doesn't have a 3.5 millimeter audio jack like my old Sony phone did. So I had to get like a USB-C to a 3.5 millimeter adapter if I'm ever going to use this with like an aux cable. And there was the other thing that I had to do that's different. It doesn't have a micro SD card. My Sony Xperia had a 1 terabyte micro SD card from Micro Center, and it had like 256 gigs built in plus a 1 terabyte micro SD. So this is technically a downgrade in terms of total storage available. But when I looked, when I transferred all my apps and data from the old phone to this one, I'm only using about 38% of the 512 gigs of storage. So even though I had that much storage on that Sony phone, it didn't even hit like 50% of 512 gigs. So I think I'm fine in terms of the storage. But that was the one thing. Like I was kind of bummed out that this didn't have a micro SD card because I'm so used to the micro SD card, especially with Framework, because it's so easy to take the micro SD card and just plug it into one of the little modules for the micro SD and just copy everything over, which is exactly what I did with the Sony phone. The battery on this thing lasts forever. So, okay, this is the insane thing. So what I did, I got this phone, I charged it up to 100%. Out of the box, I think it was like at 62% charge. So I charged it to 100%. Then I unplugged it. Then I left it unplugged overnight from 100%. Guess what percentage the battery was at in the morning? After like 9 hours. 8 to 9 hours. Because I slept about like 7.5 hours, but I didn't touch my phone until about an hour after. So guess how much the battery drained from 100% overnight? You say 95%? 101. Is that a serious answer? Is that physically possible? 101%? Oh, you're saying it. No. I'm saying how much battery. So you guys are saying it drained 95%, or you're saying it drained 5. So you mean 5%, right? Like 90. So you're saying how much is left, right? Like how much is left is what you mean. Because 101 makes me think. Are you thinking like it drained all the way to 0 and went -1? Remaining, yeah. So the correct answer. So no one's correct, although the closest answer is 97. It was 98%. 98% after 9 hours being on standby. It lost 2% charge overnight from 100 down to 98%. Insanity. I was thinking, man, like even right now, battery, I've been using the phone all day, and I've never plugged it in once. 83%. It's at 83%. It went from 98% in the morning to 83%. Can you believe that? 83%. That's crazy. This thing has a 7,300 milliamp hour battery. So the specs. Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. Gen 5. 16 gigabyte LPDDR5 RAM. 512 gigabyte storage. 7,300 milliamp hour battery. This is the reason. This battery is insane. Compare the latest Samsung to these specs. Insane battery life. 7,300 milliamp hour battery. Okay, when I got the phone from them, they're like, you're allowed to choose one free gift. I could have, I kind of regret not choosing this. So I could have chosen a battery bank. A free battery bank. That I think was like 6,500, like 6,500 milliamp battery bank or something. I could have chosen the battery bank. I chose not to get that. Instead, I chose the Nord 3 Pro earbuds, the wireless Bluetooth earbuds, which are pretty good. They sound pretty good. They're kind of like the Apple AirPods. I think the Apple AirPods have better bass, though. But those are still really good pods, and it was free. It was free. Like, you're allowed to choose one free gift. There was 3 choices. Number 1 was the earpods, which is what I chose. Number 2 was a battery bank. Number 3 was a wireless magnetic charger with a cooling fan. I didn't want that because I read the reviews on that and people were like, oh, the fan noise is annoying. So I was like, oh, we're not getting that. So it's either you could get wireless charging for free, or a wireless charger for free, or the earpods, or the battery bank. Now, if I did, because I was thinking, man, I was like, man, do I need the battery bank? But I'm thinking, like, I think I may have made the right choice because this is a big battery for a phone. Yes, it can do the fast charging, but I don't charge it that way. So I'll tell you how I charge my phone. I have like an old school like alarm clock thing. I have like an alarm clock. You know what I'm saying? I have like one of those alarm clocks. It has a USB Type A. It has a USB Type A. I plugged their included USB Type A. They come with an adapter for USB A to USB C, but the cable that comes with the phone is USB A to USB C. So we have USB A and to USB C. So I always slow charge it. I always slow charge it overnight on the slow charge, just USB straight into a alarm clock. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I use. I've been using that for the last like two other phones that I had prior to this one. And because of the slow charge, I have never had to worry about my phone battery becoming like awful. My Sony, my previous phone, it can still last the whole day. And my phone that I had before that was a OnePlus 5. The OnePlus 5, my ancient OnePlus 5, which is going to be 9 years old in November, that one still can hold a full day charge. So, slow charge, man. I don't believe in fast charging. I don't believe, unless I'm traveling, unless I'm in like an airport or something, I do not fast charge my phones at all. I never fast charge them. I always slow charge. So I'll tell you guys my phone history. I don't have a lot of like really cool phones, but this is what the phones I've got. These are my phones. This is like the GTR's phones. GTR's smartphone history, I guess, or smartphone collection. This is my smartphone because people have. I don't get this question that often, but this is what I got. I'm gonna show you guys. I still have all the phones, starting in 2010. My very first smartphone, the Motorola Droid X, the legendary Droid X. The phone that started it all for well, okay, no, that's not true because there was the Google Dream, the HTC. You know, we all know the original Android phone. No, I got the Droid X. The Droid X was the first. It was the first Android phone to popularize the like no keyboard, no physical buttons. It was the first like. Okay, actually that's not true because there was the HTC Evo. Well, the HTC Evo 4G. I can't remember if that one had a flip. No, yeah, I think yeah, it was this and the HTC Evo 4G. But anyway, this was the first phone. So this would have been 2010. This was my very first smartphone. Prior to this, I had like, cheap flip phones or whatever, like old Motorola with the antenna, the flip phones, stuff like that. So this is the first like actual smartphone that I had. This is gonna be Verizon. Then we had Samsung Galaxy S5, and this was 2014. This is again Verizon. Then I made the switch. So I had to switch because of Japan, because of the Japan arc, because of the whole Japan journey, like going to live there, the whole Japan story. Because of Japan, no Verizon allowed. I had nothing wrong with Verizon. Like I didn't hate Verizon. Verizon was fine, but because of Japan, I was forced to switch carriers because of Japan. So because of that, I got OnePlus 5, which a lot of people consider the OnePlus 5 as kind of like the golden era of OnePlus, when they were approaching the peak of the OnePlus era. So this was 2017. And this was the grand switch away from Verizon because of Japan. Because of Japan. T-Mobile is the way. T-Mobile is the truth. So then that was the OnePlus 5. Then I went to Sony Xperia 1 Mark III in 20, was it 21? Yeah, 21 or 22. Something like that, yeah. I think that was 2021. And this was, again, T-Mobile. And now here we are with the brand new phone. The brand new phone. Anyone here have a nothing phone? T-Mobile doesn't work? What do you mean T-Mobile doesn't work? And then my current phone. Now, my new phone. 2026. T-Mobile. Man, T-Mobile is so good, man. T-Mobile is so the best one. The best one. All you gotta do... let me tell you how you upgrade phones on T-Mobile. The way you upgrade phones on T-Mobile is all you do is you turn off your old phone. You take out the SIM card. You put this with your new phone off. You put the SIM card in your new phone. And you turn the new phone on. And it immediately boots up. You turn your old phone on. Google recognizes you're on a new phone. T-Mobile recognizes you're on a new phone. It immediately starts up the transfer process to swap from the old phone to the new phone and transfer all the data. It is so easy. Nano SIM technology. So I've literally had, the whole time I've been on T-Mobile, I have had the same nano SIM card all since 2017 when I made the switch away from Verizon. The same nano SIM that was in my OnePlus 5. It was in my Sony Xperia, and now it's in my brand new phone. And I've never had to call anyone from T-Mobile. I've never had to do anything. It's all automatic. It's so easy. My goodness. And now, the phone I have now, OnePlus 15. The return of the king. The return of the king. My favorite phone prior to now, my favorite phone out of all these phones was the OnePlus 5. I prefer the OnePlus 5 more than my Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. The Sony Xperia 1 Mark III is too tall. It's too narrow. It's very high spec, though. It's still a very good phone. It's very high quality. It has a great camera. It has an excellent Zeiss lens, optical zoom. So if you're doing like photography with your phone, dude, Sony is where it's at, man. If you're not on an iPhone, Sony is so good. The camera on this is so good. This thing, back in 2021, this could record 4K 60 video, but if you're taking like a telephoto lens with the optical zoom on this thing was so good. So I haven't really played around too much with my new phone's camera, but man, that Xperia, the camera was so good. It had the normie mode for amateurs, but then it had like the pro. You could switch the camera over to the pro mode, and then like the UI is literally meant for like the Sony Alpha series cameras and stuff. Oh my goodness. So I like, as much as I like the Xperia though, I preferred the feel, the weight, the size of the OnePlus 5. The OnePlus 5 was so peak in terms of the OnePlus Arc. It was so good. So I actually like my OnePlus 5 more than my Sony Xperia. But, you know, these are like enthusiast phones. I don't know if the S5 was an enthusiast phone. The Droid X was an enthusiast phone back in the day. OnePlus 15 is definitely enthusiast class. This thing outclasses the Samsung phones. For real. Like, this thing is insane specs Like, oh my goodness. I the thing that would have made the OnePlus 15 like the most perfect phone, if this thing had a micro SD card, oh my goodness, if this had a micro SD card, it would be like a 10 out of 10. Removable battery are mandatory in Europe next year. Man, okay. Good. That's good. I want to see that come back. These two phones these have removable batteries. My Droid X and my S5 had removable batteries. Micro SD is too slow. It's not too slow if you want to take the pictures on the micro SD and literally plug them into your framework desktop and transfer them over directly from the micro SD card. I'll tell you that. That's much faster than trying to transfer it from the phone using a USB cable. That's the one thing I really missed. My Sony Xperia and my Galaxy S5. I don't remember if the Droid X had the SD card. The S5 and the Xperia definitely. Xperia had so many features, man. Sony is like enthusiast territory. They have 3.5 millimeter audio jack, micro SD card, dual nano SIM, like insane specs. Xperia was so good, and the camera is so good. But the thing is, the OnePlus 5, there's something about that OnePlus 5 that was just good. Burn-ins, there's never a problem with burn-in because your phone screen like always goes dark. Literally after seconds. My phone screen is like constantly going to like sleep, man. You don't have to worry about that. That's never a problem on a phone. That's a problem on like a TV or like a monitor. When you say burn-in, you're talking about like OLED burn-in, right? T-Mobile's where it's at though, man. If you're like someone who travels a lot, let me tell you the little secret. The reason why I went to T-Mobile, I'll tell you the secret reason why I went to T-Mobile and never went back. T-Mobile, if you didn't already know this, guys, T-Mobile has free roaming in like 140 plus countries. So if you ever go outside of the US, if you ever want to go to like somewhere outside the US, T-Mobile, man, is unbeatable. Unbeatable. If you're like a global traveler, if you go outside, if you got that passport, you're ready to go, dude, T-Mobile, man. When I lived in Japan, the reason why I went to T-Mobile because I was gonna go live in Japan. I lived in Japan, and while I was there, I didn't have to do anything. I did nothing. I show up, my phone immediately roams onto Docomo or SoftBank, and everything just works. And there's no roaming fees. There's no like extra charges. You don't have to change your phone plan. You don't have to buy or pay for an international plan. You do nothing. You show up, you do zero things, and then it's just business as usual. It's perfect. So, but it depends on the country you're going to, though. All I know is when I went to Japan, when I was in Japan, I had the OnePlus 5. And it worked good. Sometimes the only problem was in the subway stations underground, sometimes you weren't getting very good. Like sometimes I would drop to like 3G speeds because the OnePlus 5 was missing, I think, 2 of the antenna bands that the Japanese cellular market, their like Docomo and those guys, KDDI, what they're using. So I would sometimes have lower speeds. Like oftentimes I would see 3G underground in the subway station, and I would go up and it would go to LTE 4G. It would drop to 4G a lot. I was getting like 4G most of the time, 3G, 4G, but no roaming fee, no like international plan charges, none of that nonsense. So it was perfect. And then Sony Xperia 1, I was in Japan back in 2024. You guys remember I was over there. I was using the Sony Xperia at that time. Sony Xperia 1. Dude, Sony is a Japanese company. Obviously, the Xperia is gonna work in its home country. It was working really, really good. I didn't even notice a difference in the speed at all. Google Maps was so fast. Everything was going quick. It was perfect. So yeah, T-Mobile is where it's at. And this video isn't even sponsored by T-Mobile. But if you're someone who like travels abroad a lot, uh, T-Mobile is unbeatable. The others you gotta like pay for extra like data things, or you gotta buy. AT&T gives you like a, depending on how long you're gonna be gone, you can buy like a 30-day international plan. I think it was like $15 or $20, $25 or something like that, for like that 1 month or whatever. So data is extremely expensive where I am, so SD is the way to go. SD card. In Paris, some subway stations are out of grid. You're are you from the US though? So you're basically in Paris and you're using like a US phone and you're having trouble, or are you just talking in general when you go underground? The signal just goes bad. Because I'm talking about how the phone has compatibility issues sometimes with international cellular networks. Oh, okay. I have two foreign SIMs, one for Canada, one for anywhere else. Yeah, you can do that too. You can buy like a local SIM card for like 2 weeks or however you're gonna be there. But I was there for like half a year. So it's like I could have bought like the local SIM card thing, but boy is it liberating to just show up and not have to do anything and everything just works and there's no change in your plan, your phone plan. It's exactly the same as if you were at home. So I don't know, man. T-Mobile just made it so easy. It's like I have no reason to swap. And now I have three phones with T-Mobile, and I've been using the exact same nano SIM card in all three phones. So my experience with T-Mobile though, uh, for the people talking about rural, yeah, I have seen. So on my Sony Xperia, if I'm in a rural area, I'll notice the Sony Xperia will have some kind of spotty coverage sometimes. It'll drop to like 4G. It'll drop to like what do you LT? No, not LT. Whatever the slow, like the 3G or whatever the LTE plus. It'll drop to like LTE plus. I would see that happen a lot with the Sony phone. That didn't happen as much with the OnePlus 5. It would happen with the Xperia quite a bit though in the rural area. Roaming fees are also insane. Yeah, roaming fees are also insane. That's the reason why. That's the reason why I switched to T-Mobile, because T-Mobile has no roaming fees. No, at least the US carrier version of T-Mobile, zero roaming fees. Now the caveat is you got to check the country if it's on the list. I looked up the OnePlus 15 before I got it, and to make sure that it. So I'll tell you guys, based off of what I read online, the OnePlus 15 has full backwards compatibility with with T-Mobile. So even in the rural areas, it'll get as good as it's gonna be able to get. So I'm hoping it's better than the Xperia in the rural areas. All right, guys. Well, we're at the end of the stream anyway, so. We kind of went over, but there you have it. I have a OnePlus 15 now. It's really good. Very impressive specs. I finally have an enthusiast phone again because my phone was like 5 years old and there was no more support. GSM is Arena is a go-to before upgrading phones. Yeah, I did the comparison. I was looking at the specs. But OnePlus 15, man. OnePlus 15, if you're on Android, if you're on T-Mobile, man, OnePlus 15. OnePlus 15 has 100% compatibility with T-Mobile in the US, and then plus if you ever want to go abroad, free roaming in 140 plus countries. this list might be longer than what it was when I last checked like 2 years ago. But man. Alright guys, that's going to be it. Yeah, Snapdragon 8 Gen 5. 10T, yeah. Alright guys, that's going to be it. If you like this sort of weird, open, long-form discussion about random tech-related stuff, do get subscribed to the channel and hit that like button or hit the notification button or bell icon to get notified when I go live. Because sometimes we do random one-off streams. Like earlier this week, I did a completely unannounced, unexpected live stream featuring this Framework Laptop 16 gaming on Fedora 44 Linux. And let me tell you, a laptop with a working fingerprint reader out of the box on Linux without having to do anything in the command line is a first for me. With Wi-Fi 7 drivers, MediaTek of all things, and everything just straight up works. First class Linux experience. So we do stuff like that from time to time. We do PC builds live sometimes. I was considering like live streaming the assembly of this Framework desktop or maybe that laptop. But I was like, well, I kind of want to create a guide video of how to assemble it just so I have a reference for my own channel. So if somebody wants to do the same thing, I can just link them the video in the future versus the live stream, which is just kind of like randomly talking with people the whole time. But anyway, we do those from time to time. So do hit the bell icon to get notified when I go live, because sometimes we'll do that unannounced. And we're probably going to do one soon. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm trying to build like a retro PC. So we'll think about things, different computer hardware that I have in storage to do that. But anyway, that's going to be it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. If you like this content, please leave a like. It does help me out. And I will see you guys next week. We may be streaming. I don't know what we're going to stream this weekend. But it'll be a surprise, I guess. Until then, take care, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.